All right. Welcome, everybody, to another TV Club bonus episode of the podcast where we're going to be talking about the first season of the Wheel of Time TV adaptation. And today I have a fantastic panel of guests to discuss the first season of the show with me. First up is P. Djèlí Clark, the award winning author of Ring Shout, Master of Djinn, and more. He's one of the biggest Wheel of Time fans I know, and I'm very glad he could join us to discuss the first season of the show. How have you been, Fenderson? Oh,
I've
yeah.
been
Look at
good.
that.
How you been?
I'm good, man. Good to see you again.
Yeah, I've been good.
Just for anyone listening, he is very casually holding
been really good right now.
bulky Wheel of Time companion. Just showing off. Oh man. By the way, for listeners and viewers, the P in his name stands for Phenderson, so that's how I'll be referring to him throughout the show. Next up, we have Patricia A. Jackson joining us, making her third appearance on the podcast in as many months. So welcome back, Patty.
Thank you.
She's the author of Forging a Nightmare. Anyone watching the video can see that flaming horse behind her. That's her debut novel, which came out last November. So how are you doing, my dear?
I'm doing very well. It's a little cold and icy here in Pennsylvania, but I have good company and good friends here.
And you're all warm and cozy inside. It's all good. And next up, we have Sara Carothers, also making her third appearance on the show. So we have a tie for the most guest appearances. And now the battle for the top spot commence. Who's going to win? Sara is
I think we should just keep it as a tie. And every time you have Patty on, you have to have me on. And every time you have me on, you have to have Patty on.
That's a very fair way to go about it. But I also feel like you're scared of Patty and you feel like you're going to lose.
My lightsaber's at school, so you're good.
I mean, but you did just bring out that horsewhip, so...
Patty's got you.
And so began the biggest rivalry between two people ever. I love it.
Sara armed with pugs and Patty armed with a horsewhip. Who's going to win? So Sara is the co-host of the Fiction Fans podcast, a voracious reader and a dear friend. And I'm very glad to have you back.
Thank you for having me on. It's a delight to be back.
As always. And finally, rounding out the panel, we've got Benjamin, host of the BookTube channel Literature and Lo-Fi. He's the slayer of TBR piles, obsessor of sci-fi and fantasy, and he loves lo-fi music, as do I. He also has a sexy British accent, so I'm happy to have you on the podcast to swoon our listeners. How are you, my friend?
Very good to be here and excited to talk about the Wheel of Time with you guys.
Yeah. Well, let's get into it. Kicking off the discussion, I just wanted to hear everybody's personal relationship, history with the Wheel of Time series. So Fenderson, we'll kick it off with you.
You saw my big companion there. I think I started reading. I mean, my association with it was that I had finished reading a bunch. I was younger and I finished reading a bunch of other they weren't nothing this long. Trilogies, things like the Belgariad and all those kinds of things. And I was casting around for something new to read, and there was this guy, and he was holding this book called Eye of the World. I said, "Well, that looks interesting. What's that about?" And he said, "Oh, it's this great book, and it's so good. I'm almost done. I'm almost finished, but I like it so much, I'm going to stop reading it and read it all over again so I can just get to the end." Right? I don't know. That's weird, but sure, dude, whatever. He said, "So you can borrow it in the meantime, and then you can just give it back to me, and I'll just be able to read it again." So I said, "Okay." And so I took that book, and he never saw that book again. I dodged him in the streets. He would call me. I'd be like, "No, I'm not home." He never saw the book again. That's just the way it was. I still have the book here. If you want it, come at me. But I got the book. That's it. And so since that time, I think I just fell in love with the series. Felt like I grew up with the folks in Edmonds Field. Yes, I read the whole way through all of them. I've reread them. And so, I always think that in some ways, my early writing, in fact, probably was a little too close to Robert Jordan. There was that much of an influence. And so I had to break of that. But it's still one of my things that I like reading. I enjoy reading. I've listened to the audiobooks as well. And so, love the series. Have my critiques of the series. Lots of critiques of the series. But also a series that I really like. So I was really excited to learn that there would be a television show, especially after being burned way back when Spike TV was going to do one. And it never happened. So I was really happy that to see this one come about.
I think it's probably a good thing that Spike TV didn't end up doing the adaptation.
Agreed.
Dodged the bullet on that one.
For sure. My memories of Spike TV were not great back in the day. That was the channel my parents were just like, stay away. Very firm. Do not watch that channel.
It was tainted by the male power.
It was. Oh. So it would have been perfect. Oh man, they could have had so many inside jokes. Damn. And Sarah, what about you? What's your personal history with Wheel of Time?
So I am the one half of Fiction Fans podcast that likes Wheel of Time. Lily is not a fan whatsoever.
She hasn't even started. It barely even started.
I think she watched the first 5 episodes of the show. But I don't think she's finished the season, and she has no plans to read the books. But I got into the books because a good friend of mine is a huge fan, and she wanted someone to talk about the upcoming TV show with. So I said, okay, I'll read the books for you, so that you can talk about the show to me. And I did.
And how long
that is friendship.
Did it take you? How long did it take you to read all of them? Because I feel like people are going to be surprised by how quickly you went through that series.
So I read all of them in a year, or 12 months. But in the meantime, I started a podcast, and so my Wheel of Time reading time decreased exponentially.
But I feel like a year is very impressive to go through.
Yeah, still. Oh my gosh.
Those books are like, I think the shortest one is 600-700 pages or something like that.
They're quite long. Yeah, it was a commitment.
It's like New Spring is like a novella in the eyes of that series. It's like, no, that's a full-on novel, straight up. Oh, man. And Patty, what's your relationship with Wheel of Time?
I came into becoming a reader a little late in life. I was probably 13 when I fell in love with Mary Stewart's books. And then I discovered Frank Herbert. And then I discovered, Tolkien's books, Lord of the Rings, and fell in love with them. By the time I got around to The Eye of the World, I think I was done with things being over described to me, and I wanted more of a fast and furious pace to my writing. So I don't like to be a quitter. I don't like to do not finish on a book. So I did finish, but I sort of felt like I had the whole Thomas Hardy Return of the Native effect going on. And schools kill a love of reading for some kids in some cases, and I think there was some of that. So I didn't go beyond that. But as far as the television show, when I heard about it, it's fantasy, and I'm a diehard fan, so I was there. And I love any kind of fantasy I can get my hand on. So I'm probably going to be the non-smartest one of the group here, but I can give that visceral effect as far as a TV show. So there you go.
It's not about smarts, Patty. Come on now.
Yeah.
Has nothing to do with intelligence. It's all about patience. And if Forging a Nightmare is any indication, Patty loves a fast-paced novel.
Galloping pace. We call it galloping pace. And it's also one of those novels where you have this huge ensemble cast. And I guess from being an only child, I'm always looking for that one character I can latch onto, and I want that story. And when you take me away to all these different stories, I get impatient and I start skipping because I want to get back to that character. Lan. just saying.
Oh, my poor Lan. And Ben, if you want to share with everybody your history with the series.
Yeah, sure. So I started around a year and a half ago, and it was mainly like me getting into BookTube and also back into reading after years and years of not really reading that much and really missing fantasy. So I picked it back up. And everyone was talking about The Eye of the World and Wheel of Time. The TV show was coming. It's the next big thing. So I decided to pick it up, give it a try. After, I think I finished the first book in a week. Then I put it down and went, well, that wasn't amazing. It was okay. I sort of just brushed it aside. And then a couple of months later, I picked up the second book and I missed all the characters and was like, wow, this is like returning to old friends. That's what it felt like for me. And yes, after that, it was pretty much a blur. And I just started reading all the books within the span of a year.
Amazing. And he also covered you've covered all of them on your channel, correct?
No, I've only just started the series covering the books on the channel.
Okay.
I'm doing a reread now, and at the same time doing my sort of retrospective reviews on it.
Nice.
Wow.
And my personal history, I picked it up when I was younger. So I'd finished The Lord of the Rings on my second attempt reading The Lord of the Rings, because my first attempt I was 8. After reading The Hobbit, I thought, I'm going to read Lord of the Rings. Ha ha ha. Yeah. So I came back to it when I was 12, and after that I just had a real craving for more fantasy, and then found Robert Jordan's series. I only read up to the 4th book, because I didn't read them all in short burst or anything like that. It was kind of like I read them once a year, like one book a year type thing. And by the time I finished the 4th book, I was in high school, and then I graduated and went to university, and my reading habits just got overwhelmed by classic English literature and all that fun stuff. So my fantasy kind of took a backseat, unfortunately. But I picked it up again last summer. One of the guys from FanFiAddict, Manny, asked everybody if they wanted to do a 1 month book by book reread, so 1 book a month type thing of the Wheel of Time. And I did the first month with him and a bunch of other people in August, read Eye of the World, and realized with all the other reading I do, it's not going to be easy for me to complete 1 book a month. It's going to be near impossible. So I read Eye of the World, reread it, enjoyed it, still have my criticisms, but it was kind of cool to reconnect with the world after over a decade. And I have The Great Hunt on my reread TBR for this year. So I'm kind of going at it with, I'm going to try and get 1 or 2 books a year, and I'll be done by the time my son graduates. So but I do love the series. It's a really captivating world, and I think the show presents a lot of stuff that is so captivating about what Robert Jordan created. It's not flawless, but we're going to get into first impressions and see what everyone thinks of the show. So the show came out starting in November, ended in, I think it was around Christmas time last month.
Mhm.
8 episodes in total, and this is on Amazon Prime. So for anyone who is listening to this and hasn't watched the show, go check it out. But you will need an Amazon Prime subscription. But let's get into first impressions, because I'm very, very curious what everyone thinks. So let's start off with Sarah.
Overall, I really enjoyed the show. I got to attend one of the early viewings because there was an early viewing of the first 2 episodes held in San Francisco. So I got a little sneak preview, which was really cool. And that gave me a lot of confidence in the show, which I think held up until about episode 8, which I was pretty disappointed in. I did rewatch the series as a whole over Christmas and liked episode 8 much better, but I still think it's the weakest episode of all of the season.
And we'll get into we'll get into episode 8 later on. Ben, what about you? What was your first impression after finishing the first season of the show?
So I was actually suffering from a book hangover from actually finishing the series at this point. But I went in feeling really optimistic about it and quite hopeful. And I think the love for the series really did catch me quite a bit, and that there were certain parts where I was just like, oh my god, we're actually doing this, we're living this world, it feels amazing. And then at the same time, I think there were moments where I was like, oh no, the fans are really going to backlash on this, oh no. So it was mixed feelings for me, but it really did build up as the series went on. There was a lot of things I thought, okay, I'm feeling hopeful now, we're doing a lot of the right things, we can attract a much larger audience. And then episode 8 came, and I'll leave it at that.
Oh, episode 8. Patty, what was your first impression?
You're always talking to first-time writers with their novels, not to dump everything in the first chapter, and that's sort of what the first episode felt like, a little amateur hour. But again, I'm not into big ensemble casts and lots of things happening at the same time. I like to latch on to a character. So it took me 2 episodes to say, "Okay, I'm gonna stay here for a little while." The character of Rand gives me Anakin vibes, which wanted to send me to the hills. He even looks like Anakin. I just wanted to run for the hills. But I was in love with Lan, and I love Rosamund Pike. I love her work. So I thought, okay, we're going to stay with this, and we're going to roll with it. Because I love fantasy, and there just isn't enough of it on television. And I got to the point where I was excited for the next episodes to come. And then episode 8 happened. And I was like, what is this? Because this is a kind of fantasy and something else that sets me ajar. I don't like it. So I can't wait till we get to that point. But I will give it a go. I will show up for season 2. I will be there for season 2.
Cool. And Fenderson, what about you? Episode
So,
8.
you know,
Just...
one of the things is that I come at this as a person who read the books when I was younger, and you always have to wonder when you read the books when you're younger that part of it is just nostalgia, right? Part of it is that, like, when I said I grew up with them, like, literally years, right? Like, I had to wait for the book to come out and all that. And so I have a relationship to it that's perhaps a little different because I read them so early, and that, you know, I kept on reading them. And so when the TV show came out, I told myself, one, a TV show cannot possibly be the same thing as a book. That's impossible, right? You can't adapt these things. These are very lengthy books. There's no way you can put all of this in here. In fact, The Wheel of Time was often called the unadaptable. Like, it was literally words, and it was unadaptable to the screen in any way. And so when this was going to be done, I kind of told myself, okay, talk myself down. You know, I did my Gollum, like, back and forth, like, hey, buddy, you know, it can't be all these things. They're going to have to cut things out. They're going to have to shorten things. They're going to have to do what. So by the way, I blogged about each episode on my own blog, The Disgruntled Haradrim, which is named after Tolkien. But anyway, and so I blogged about each episode, and I think the term I came up with was economical world building. How do you find a way to expand and talk about this huge world in the short amount of time you have? Thinking about time constraints, thinking about budgets, thinking about is getting everybody immersed in this so that they are along for the ride. And so I went in there fully understanding that. And so from the first episode onward, I kind of accepted a lot of things, even if sometimes I was like, I think like Ben said, sometimes I was like, oh, the fans are not going to like that.
Yeah.
I'm one of the fans. I don't like that.
Yeah.
But I was kind of like, okay, let's see what you got next, right? Okay, you've made some serious changes here. That's kind of brave, right? Like dodgeball, like, you know, that's a brave move. Let's see how this is going to work out for you. And so I watched, and I was pretty much along for the ride. I think I loved when I got to see certain things that we never got to see in the books that they decided to expand on, especially on those openers. And so I really liked a lot of that stuff. And I just wondered, like, you built this up. Let's see if you can stick that landing. And the landing was a little off.
Yeah.
The landing was a little off at the end. The infamous episode 8, the landing was a little. When I had to put up the numbers, I was like, "Yeah, you built this all up there." It was like watching a person about to break dance, you know, and they get really ready for it, and then when they finally do it, you're like,
I'm just imagining like Wheel of Time breakdance.
Like the show. I am looking forward to next season. As much as you will hear me with criticisms, I overall said I like the series. I was just disappointed in something.
I think I came at it from a similar perspective as you, Fenderson, that since I reread Eye of the World recently, so many of these things were fresh in my mind. And before the show came out, I was thinking, like, do I have to build this all up in my head as if it's going to be the perfect replica of that book? And obviously the book has some things that I wasn't a huge fan of either, as much as I enjoy it. But at the same time, just knowing how things generally work the disappointment that I've felt in the past when it comes to adaptations. Hey, Game of Thrones, how you doing? Um, to not take things too personally, and to understand that this show is essentially someone else's version of Wheel of Time, and that if things are not how I like it, that's just how it is. I don't need to get all butthurt about it. Just love the show for what's really good,
Hmm.
critique it for what I didn't like, and then like Ben and Fenderson were doing, having those moments where I was just like, ha, oh man, the fans are gonna go fucking wild over this, and just enjoy that, because it actually brought me some good laughs to think like, oh, that moment right there, yes. And overall, I mean, I had mixed feelings about the first season, but um, I I've watched all 8 episodes twice, but the first run through was with my parents because they were visiting during December, so it was really cool to see. I kind of tested the waters. I was like, "Mom, Dad, do you want to watch this with my wife and I?" And my mom was like, "Yeah, sure, whatever." It was only an hour. And after the first episode, my mom kept pestering us and was just like, "So we're gonna watch Wheel of Time tonight?" And I was like, "Oh wow, okay." We watched
Good.
2, 3 episodes. My mom's like, "Come on, like, there's 5 more episodes. Let's keep watching." So I was really enjoying experiencing it with my
Yeah.
parents, and to see how my dad fell asleep a couple times. He's just that kind of guy when he watches movies or TV, and there is a lot of exposition in this show. And I was just kind of like watching my mom with a keen eye and being like, how is she reacting to this? And the funniest thing, when this season ended, I'm just going to do a quick aside. When the season ended, and I explained to my mom, because I gave her nothing. I gave her nothing. I was just like, it's a fantasy show. Let's check it out. The end of the season, I told my mom, this is a 14-book fantasy series. And she's like, what? And it was like, yep. And they're gonna try and condense it into maybe 10. She's like, 10 seasons? Are you fucking kidding me? And then she's like, I'm out. She straight up said, I'm out. I'm like, okay. So that was the best moment for me, to see my mom's reaction and her just saying, I'm out. I like the first season, but 10, are you kidding me? I cannot do that. So
Why? Why would she tap out? I mean, that's a good thing.
my mom's not the kind of, she's like quick and dirty when it comes to movies
Oh,
and
okay.
series. Yeah.
I understand that.
Yeah. So 10 seasons for her is like, that's too much. That's too much, man.
It's funny because I watched it with my parents as well, and they had the opposite reaction at the end. They were like, "I want more." My mother said, "I'm really tempted to go out and buy all 14 books now."
Yeah, because I told my mom, I was like, I can send you the link for the ebook, because she has a Kindle now. I was like, I can send you the link for the complete Wheel of Time, because she loves reading. She reads all the time. But she's like, no, 14 books is too many. And then I just look at her. I'm like, you're a Danielle Steele fan. How can you be? How? Ugh, no, I couldn't. It's like, how many Danielle Steele books have you read? How many Nora Roberts books have you read? Just like, don't give me
Yeah.
that 14 is too much crap.
Wow.
Yeah. It was a wonderful. Patty, you're just looking at me like,
Well, it's
oh
not like she
man.
even has to wait. She can finish one book, and if she liked it, she can just get the next one. It's not like Fenderson, who had to like wait, and on bated breath for the next one to come. So,
Yeah.
yeah, I'm kind of shocked. And you're right, Danielle Steele. No, I used to work in a bookstore. I know what that looks like.
Yeah. I'm not going to get too much into my mom's reading history. Before we get into anything else, parents aside, I think this show deserves a little bit of a moment to reflect on just the character performances, because we do have this main cast, and it is such a character driven show that um that if viewers did not connect with any or all of the characters, then that would kind of ruin the show for you. For me, the reason that I was invested in the show is because I'm invested in the characters. So I want to take a moment for us to just kind of go through each of the main cast, and we can reflect a little bit on the performances, how it squares up in terms of what we envisioned while we were reading the books, and then how the actors themselves succeeded or perhaps failed or middled in terms of their representation of that character. So first off, we've got Moyrane, who was portrayed by the actress Rosamund Pike. So if anyone wants to jump in on what they thought of Moyrane, go for it. Anyone?
I thought she did a great job, and really grounded the series as kind of like our main point of view character and our introduction to the Emmonsfield Five and the world. And we get a lot more of her and her relationship with Lan than I feel we get in the books, and I really liked how that was developed. I thought that added a layer of complexity that made it made her feel more like a person and less kind of like this Gandalf figure that you don't really know if you can trust or not.
Mm-hmm. But then there were things about Moyrane that, as it goes on, you do see that she's holding a lot back, and that she does have her own personal machinations.
Yes.
Oh yeah, I mean, she definitely is working towards her own goals, and she's not telling everyone everything. But I think that comes across in a much more understandable way in the show than it does in the books.
Yeah, that's true. I will say I loved her portrayal, but the introduction to her in the first episode was a little bit cheesy for me, where it's just she strolls into the bar like it's a fucking Western saloon, and everyone's like, "Who's that?" That was a bit, it didn't really work for me.
I did expect like a Reeve shootout at that point or something along those lines.
Yeah. I could tell again in the economical world building, they were just trying to cut down on, I guess in the books, it's like, there's a lot of talk, like there's a lady in the village, and everybody's, and we like have to endure that for like pages and pages and pages. They were like, let's just cut the chase. Got to do it quick here. Yeah. It's like, she's there. There's a lady in the village. And so, no, I thought she was a great character. I think I agree with what Sara said. I like that they invested more in her character. I thought, and we'll talk about Lan in a second, but I thought her and Lan were both made a bit more complex. Though in the books we know she is, but you're right, Sara. She has the "I'm an aloof Aes Sedai," right? And so in this one, we really got to see more about her. And I guess in the books, one of the things is that in that first book especially, everything is Rand's perspective for the most part of everyone. And so what the show gets to do that the books don't, they don't have to, especially since they were trying to Jedi mind fake us with who is the dragon.
Yeah.
And so that, and I'm like, yeah, we all know it's Rand, y'all. It's gonna be Rand. Come on. And so because everything is not Rand centered, I think we got to see a lot more of her from her perspective. Where everything is not just like, what does Rand see of her? And so I really like that. Oh, and I have to say that they didn't get to do the ageless thing. Somebody called it magical Botox that Robert Jordan has, and they said the reason they couldn't was they just didn't have the budget. They just didn't have the budget. And like people were complaining about that. I was like, well, you got magical Botox money? Then no, then this is what we have. And I somehow still think that there was a way that Rosamund Pike pulled it off. I suppose maybe in her gracefulness or whatever, where I knew that wasn't the ageless thing, but I could still get this notion that when she shows up, she's a figure that commands presence and power. And so I thought that was really well done.
Yeah, and
she had a gravity to her.
Exactly. Yeah. It's like you could sense that she was wise and had experienced a lot of stuff, and at the same time she felt very human. And I think that's something for me that was great. This extended portrayal of her presented the more human sides of her character and her personality, and we'll get into it later, but especially her relationship with Lan, and then I think it's episode 7 where things are revealed about her her relationship with the Emerlin seat.
Well, she's a Bond
episode
girl.
6, I think.
Episode 6.
Yeah.
Episode 6.
She's a Bond girl, and she kind of brought that a little bit. And I guess I wasn't worried about the bar thing because as a D&D player, it always pops off in the bar.
An elf, a dwarf, and a ranger walk into a bar.
Absolutely. So I was like, oh, okay, you got to pay attention because here comes the quest. But I thought she brought just a maturity, and there was a duplicity to her. I guess what I really liked about her is vulnerable. She got hurt. And that really took her down a couple of notches, and you don't necessarily always see that with Gandalf. It's a crisis moment when Gandalf is hurt, but she was really hurt, and she stayed hurt throughout this, which gave her an authenticity.
Mm-hmm. Ben, what about
you? And
you?
I have to say,
oh, sorry, Phenderson, go ahead.
Sorry, no, I forgot Ben hadn't gone.
Well, I have to agree with Patty, actually. Like, I really like the fact that they made Moyrane quite vulnerable. It's something you get in some of the books, but you don't get to a massive extent. Mm-hmm. And for me, the wisest decision they ever made with the show was actually making Moyrane center, making her the glue which brings all the characters together. Because we're going to have them all wondering about more. We're going to have loads more cutscenes, loads more characters that we don't follow in the books doing stuff. They've all got to come back to someone, so it might as well be Moyrane. And I think she did a terrific job. She smashed it out of the park.
Yeah, because so much of the world building and the characters, the Emmonsfield Five, and their trajectory relies upon Moyrane, and a lot of the world building is propelled by her because she's dragging them along through these different places. Mm-hmm. And so, yeah, like you say, Ben, a lot of the context for the show comes through her acting as the narrative center, the focal point. And I think, yeah, Rosamund Pike nailed it in that respect. Phenderson, you want to get in here with a bit more?
Well, I was just going to say one last thing. I think one thing that she does, and this is like a criticism of the show, and yet it's a positive for her, is that, and I'll go back to the bar scene, like Patricia said, her walking into the bar. The one thing that did do that I did like was that it showed you, like, when people walked in and they saw the serpent ring, I was like, yeah, that's the thing. You know, like in the books, you show that serpent ring and everybody like snap to it. You know what this is. You know what this means, right? I'm an Aes Sedai, and Aes Sedai's in the house. Everybody, like, get quiet and start groveling, knuckle your forehead, whatever that means in the books, you know, constantly. You remember that? Like, there's a lot of knuckling of the forehead.
Dude, Jordan has a ton of really weird description. It's just like, stop fucking playing with your braid. Like, yeah.
So I like that. And the criticism is that Moyrane really emphasized that. She had that, like somebody said, that gravitas. And I thought that I didn't get that really from the rest of the show from the other Aes Sedai all the time. Maybe when they were Tarvalin, I didn't get the feeling that people knew, like, Aes Sedai, like, whoa. You know, Aes Sedai show up, it should be like, that's a Jedi, right? Everybody should be like, drop what you're doing. That's an Aes Sedai, right? And I didn't get that fully from the rest the way I got from her. Maybe I got a little bit, certainly from Swan, because she's camera on the seat. But I don't think I got that, and I was glad that she provided that. And I was disappointed that I didn't get that sense of that later on. I'll even go into White Cloaks, you know, chopping off Aes Sedai hands and all. I was like, well, yeah, come on. But yeah, so I thought that she gave the respect. She put the respect on the Aes Sedai name that I thought that needed to be done, and I was disappointed I didn't see that kept up, as I saw it anyway, throughout the series.
Yeah, because there was a world building moment in the bar scene where she gets this reaction from a lot of the people that are in the bar, whether it's disgust or just kind of like hatred towards the Aes Sedai. That was a really cool world building point, but that didn't really happen that much later on. And it doesn't necessarily have to come up in the form of a visceral reaction like that. It could be, like you say, instead of disgust or hatred or just aversion to Aes Sedai, it could be someone being like, oh shit, you know, this is a Jedi, this is an Aes Sedai, this is someone really, really powerful, and just coming that moment of awe. But that doesn't really happen that much. And then, like you say, doesn't really come up again until Tar Valon, where people are living amongst the Aes Sedai, and then you have the Amyrlin seat who evokes that sort of,
like, even showing up in Fal Dara, like, it was like, oh yeah, it's like, Aes Sedai's here, like, big deal, y'all.
Yeah,
y'all get up, stand up. There's an Aes Sedai here, but didn't get that. But.
Yeah, Sarah, you want to say something?
I was just going to say that we don't actually see a lot of interaction between the Aes Sedai and like normal folk, and I think in Fal Dara, they're because Lady, what is it, Amalisa, has trained at the White Tower. I feel like some of the mystique is kind of gone away from the Aes Sedai a little bit there. But that's not necessarily the case with other people who don't have any interactions with them, but we just haven't seen that happen yet.
Yeah. Because there are, I mean, we'll get into this, but there are some prime locations from the books that get skipped over where there are moments of common folk interacting with the Aes Sedai much more directly. But let's get into Lan first. How did everyone think of Lan's portrayal? He was acted by Daniel Henney. So if anyone wants to get in on that.
He is my reason for staying with the show.
Because he's sexy.
I just love his character. There's such a quiet strength about him that is just so wonderful, because he's like a special ops soldier.
Yeah.
And
do you love his character or his butt that we see in the first episode?
Yeah.
I was thinking his pecs myself, but we can always go back and check that out. No, I'm gonna be good. I'm drawn to the warders. As someone who's sort of a wheel horse myself, and what I mean by that is you're the closest to the carriage and you have to be the most reliable of the horses that are pulling that weight. And I always go back to the book ban that happened in my school district. I was a wheel horse. I was just quiet and just kept pulling the wagon, hoping for a good end. And that's Lan. He's reliable. He can always be depended upon, and he just keeps pushing no matter what the circumstance is, and regardless of how he feels about her, and vice versa. There's a job to be done, and I'm going to do it in the quietest and most effective way that I can, and that just makes him a very compelling character.
Yeah, I agree. And that bathtub scene he shares with Moyrane is the sexiest bath I've ever seen.
Yeah.
Anyone else with some thoughts on Lan?
I really appreciated seeing the deep friendship that they had, because you don't often see a relationship that's non-sexual in any sort of way, or non-romantic in any sort of way. And so I loved that. And you can tell that they trust each other, they rely on each other, they depend on each other, but there's nothing inherently romantic about that. So that was great. And Daniel Henney is fantastic. I thought he portrayed Lan really well.
Yeah, because he has on one hand he has the calm strength that Patricia mentioned, but on the other he does have a depth of emotion that I really appreciated, which doesn't make him seem. I felt like in the books, the Lan in particular felt a bit like not necessarily wooden, but he just didn't really show that much emotion.
For me, in the books, he felt really one-dimensional.
Yeah.
Yes.
And he gets a lot more depth to his character, I think, in the show.
I have to agree with that. I think he comes across as quite stoic in the books, and nothing really else, which frustrated me a little bit. But then with Daniel Henney hopping into the show, we're seeing so many layers and dimensions to Lan now. And that's a positive change. I always thought if you're going to introduce the more grown-up characters, they need to be a little more engaging for the audience, and they've done a terrific job with both of them, really.
And it kind of came across like Lan and Moyrane, with Moyrane being such a narrative focal point, Lan helped carry a lot of the weight for her, and they shared a lot of the narrative, let's say, complexity that was added to the show that wasn't present in the books was given to Moyrane and Lan, and broadening their characters and rounding them out and making them feel much more engaging and more worth investing in. So, Phenderson, do you have any extra comments about Lan?
I mean, I think I agree with everyone here. I think Lan's character, well, first of all, starting with the diversity, I've written a blog a while back when I first heard of the show, and I said Wheel of Time has a chance to be the most diverse show on television. I specifically spoke of Lan, who is a character who's described in somewhere as blue eyes, but he wears all Asian outfits and everything, and people wear the bindi on their foreheads. So I said, you can take this a little further. Robert Jordan wanted you to. And so I was happy to see Daniel Henney cast in this role. I was happy that they went far beyond my thoughts of what they were going to do with diversity on this show. So I'll say that from the first thing. And so, yeah, this Lan, talk about a change from the books that was definitely a change for the better. This Lan completely outshines the Lan in the book. The Lan in the books, especially I suppose for those for that first book and maybe the first 2 books or 3, I'll call him stoic, wooden. Lan was a bit of a prick. That's what he was. It's like, you call me sheep herder one more time, my dude. Call me sheep herder one more time. It's like that was his thing. He was just gruff. He doesn't become approachable to like Rand until like I think a little bit of book 2 when he starts getting a little training. But yeah, he's just a completely different character. And so this character having emotion, getting to show us what that bond is between Waters and Aes Sedai. The whole episode where he shows emotion of the land in the books would never have shown with the death of a warden. Like that would never have happened with the land in the books. And so I think all of that was just a positive. Those were the changes where if fans were upset, like deal with it. Those are changes. I think there are changes that are great when they enhance this larger story of the books, because the land that you see a lot later, as he gets more involved in Nynaeve, is changed, is less wooden. And I guess they're trying to say that Nynaeve did that or what have you, but I don't know if that's the point. And so I'm glad that they got there now. We didn't have to wait, season after season before the land starts defrosting from carbonite that he's stuck in for like the first few books. I mean, and he still has the deadliness, right? I guess that's the thing. He still is deadly. He can still do that. I mean, there were a few times though, like the one time, like I think Rand pulled out on Lan. I was like, dude, like,
step
what
back,
are you doing?
Step off, boy.
Yeah, like I would say the book Lan, like, yeah, you would have lost your hand, my dude.
Yeah.
Like, so you're lucky that this Lan is a little less, a little less brolic about it. So, but no, I liked him overall.
Yeah, 100% agree. Lan, I think for me personally, was my favorite character of the season. But let's jump into the Emond's Field 5. So we have Rand, who was portrayed by Jossa Stradowski, Egwene, who was portrayed by Madeline Madden, and Nynaeve, who was portrayed by Zoe Robbins, Matt, Barney Harris, and Perrin, portrayed by Marcus Rutherford. So what were your first impressions of the Emond's Field 5, and how did you feel about their overall character portrayals? So if anyone wants to jump in there.
Nynaeve and Egwene, they pretty much are the standout from Emond's Field.
Absolutely.
And in the books, and there's a way that they also stand out, but certainly here they certainly shine above the rest in the way their characters are developed. In the way I love that Nynaeve doesn't have to do the waiting and like, will Lan talk to me or not? Get out for it.
And the braid,
it's
the braid thing I mentioned earlier. It's just like, stop playing with your braid. It's
yeah. And so I mean, they just enhance their character. The escape from the Trolloc, adding all of that in with the escape from the Trolloc. By the way, us getting to see that battle. By the way, because in the books you just hear about it. They decided to show instead of telling in the show, so that's great. And so Egwene's characters, well, there's some things I would like to see done a bit more with Egwene's character, but I thought, it's still developed. I think those two were still a bit more developed. When it comes to the other 3, Rand did what he has to do. I mean, he's Rand. Rand, the character in the first book, is mostly like, is Tam my dad? Is he not? I don't know. I mean, because they kind of hid that away from us. Because I remember I don't think they really point out that Tam said that. I went back and looked. No, they never really have Tam say like, "Oh, you're not my son" in his fever dream.
They said it in episode 7, and they kind of used it as a reveal.
Episode 7 to do it, so you don't have to see him like, "Is he my dad? Is he my dad?" the whole time. And so Rand is just kind of there. He's a bit more forward than he is, like the way he talks to Moyrane and things in the book. And so he's Rand. I mean. And my going in and knowing, well, he's Rand, right? I thought he did what he had to do, knowing that Rand's character really takes off to me, like book 2, 3, really by book 4, he's a completely different person in the book. He's because of what he becomes. He's a completely different person in the books by book 4. And so that's fine. Matt and Perrin, I was not feeling Dark Perrin. I wouldn't go into him being married. Okay, cool. Him killing his wife, and then the reason he did that, I don't know. It was his killing the wife felt like a little fridging, because it felt like that was a great way to get him to later on feel dark and remorseful. I don't know. And Matt's character was I don't know. I don't know what to make of Matt's character. He didn't even go through the way, so I have no idea what's going on with Matt's character. I will say this is my last thing, so I don't want to take up too much time. But one thing I've noticed that was different, and I guess it just had to be, was that when I first read those books, I had no idea how old those characters were, the Edmonds Fielders. I assumed they were like 14 or 15 because they act like 14 or 15
Me
year
too.
olds, the way they interact. And it was going back much later. I was like, oh, they're supposed to be 19? Like, no way. Right? And I saw the show had to up that. The show had to be like, yeah, you guys have sex. Yeah, Matt is not releasing badgers to go after girls.
Yeah.
Right?
He's
on Beltane.
He's stealing shit instead of being like a little prankster. He's the village prankster.
Instead of being a prankster.
No,
and so I understood desperate. They had to change that, and I was fine with that. Like, let's grow these guys up. But I still didn't know what they were doing with Matt. I'm not sure. I guess they know. I still didn't know that they were doing those two characters the most justice, and that's where I'll leave that.
Yeah. Anyone else want to jump in and take off from where Phenderson was talking?
I totally agree. I think the girls were wonderful. Nynaeve was fantastic. And her taking control of the whole relationship with Lan, I thought was fantastic. And I think Egwene's just waiting for her moment to come through. And I think it will come through. I feel the boys sort of fell down where they should have been pinnacles to the story. I already told you how I feel about Rand. He is Anakin vibes all over him. And he even looks like Hayden Christensen. So I'm just like, we can't even talk to you right now. I thought Perrin was a lost moment. The wife killing thing I thought could have really been addressed in a different way. And it's just kind of like it happened.
We don't even know her. She has no lines.
Exactly.
Yeah, I know. And then Matt, I'm waiting for Matt to become part of the Nazgul. I just, what are you doing, buddy? What is, are you dark or are you light? What are you? And what's sad about that is he had such a care for his sister. Yeah, he was a little thief. Yeah, he stole stuff, but yeah, he cared about his sister and he cared about the little kid. Eventually when they stayed at those people's house and what happened, they just don't go far enough to do him any kind of real justice. So I'm afraid the boys are falling down on the job here while the girls are carrying the weight.
I think, oh, sorry, go on.
I was going to say, I actually slightly disagree with you on Matt. Because I really enjoyed the changes to his backstory that they made. I thought that adding that kind of hint of darkness and the thievery really helped make his actions in Shadar Logoth make more sense. Like he's not concerned with money and gold just for the sake of, gambling. Like there's a reason for it. He comes from poverty and he wants to care for his sisters. And I personally really liked that. I also think that his character was really affected by Barney Harris leaving halfway through the season. Like I don't think that he came back to film episodes 7 and 8.
No, he was
because
done,
of COVID.
He was done by episode 6, and so they had to edit him out of those last two, or they had to write him out of those last two episodes, and then edit him.
I think that is probably why his storyline feels so uneven, because there was this really drastic change.
Oh yeah, don't get me wrong. Yeah. I missed the part with his sister stealing for your family and trying to take care of your family and doing wrong to protect yours. I'm all for that. I was looking for more, but I had just heard rumblings about the actor not coming back, so that does make sense.
Yeah, so I would have been interested to see what they would have done with his storyline in particular had Barney Harris stayed on for the entire season. And had they not had to work around that.
Agreed. Ben, you wanted to get in?
Yeah, I was going to add to the Matt situation. I've read a few interviews and people like Brandon Sanderson, for example, who were given input about the finale and how it was actually completely different at first because Matt was meant to be there. And, I think it was 5 episodes and they realised they had to write Matt out. And it just completely derailed it. So, there's a little bit of disbalance in the Force right now in terms of that story. But I've got faith in the next few seasons that, that they'll retcon everything a little bit. It's their chance for them to really get a feel for the show, build momentum, and hopefully take on board any criticism we're given as well, and hopefully we can have like a completely phenomenal show by the end of it. That's what I'm holding out for.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah,
for the other characters,
we'll get into hosts
feel
later
prepared.
on, but yeah, what do you think?
I just want to say
Oh, go ahead.
Sorry,
Phenderson.
go ahead. Sorry.
What did you think about Rand and Perrin, Ben?
So I think they intentionally downplayed Rand a lot because we know that he's the chosen one. Us readers knew that he was going to be, quite prominent. If you read the books, you're like, okay, Rand's the main guy. We know that. Whereas in the show, they have to downplay that because we've got so many new viewers coming on board. The best thing to grip them is that mystery of who is the Dragon Reborn. And I don't object to them changing and adding the girls into the who could be the dragon either. I thought that was actually quite a smart move. With Perrin, he's just sidelined, and I really feel for him, Yeah. We didn't get Elias. I feel like the wolf scenes could have been explained a little bit better. I really do. I still just get comical images about that wolf scene in my head. But yeah, I think the actor, Marcus, he's actually got really good range. I've seen him in some other stuff, and he looks really promising from what he can do. So fingers crossed, we see more of that later on.
Yeah, I agree about Perrin. He was underplayed, and to the detriment of the show. We'll get into that later on.
I think Perrin may have needed Elias.
Yeah.
I think somehow they had to squeeze Elias in there to get Perrin to the wolves somehow.
Yeah.
Because right now, he's kind of just twisting in the wind.
Exactly.
I'll say with Matt, on my blog, I really was not a fan of Dark Matt. I really was not a fan of they were like, well, we want to change, Edmund's Field, so it's not the Shire. And I was like, I get it. I don't know if Dark always needs, I don't know if our notion of making things more realistic means that it always has to be dark. That's just my own personal critique.
It's the grim dark.
And so I didn't know if that was a need for that with Matt, like his dad's a philanderer. I was like, and there are all these other issues. I said, I guess, and that he's a thief. I was like, okay, but I was willing to go along with it because I think one thing I remembered is that in the books, Matt's character, and this may be Jordan himself, doesn't seem to come into who I think of Matt as the gambler, as Sara was saying. That person doesn't show up until book 3. For the first 2 books, it's him and that dagger, and you don't know what's going on with him. So I have faith, like Ben, I think, or perhaps like Sara, that we're going to eventually get to the roguish Matt. It's just that I don't know how much this darkness, this dark Matt is going to fit into that. And I hope they have something planned because, the Matt that we eventually, I think that a lot of people like, he's not exactly dark. He's he is I have to use he's a ne'er-do-well. He's got a bit of the best part, he's a scamp. He's the Huckleberry Finn of the Robert Jordan world in many ways. And I don't know that I wanted him dark, but I mean, I don't have any choice. Nobody's giving me any money to make a thing, so I'll go along with it. And one last thing, I think somebody had mentioned this. I think Ben had mentioned this, and I think this is a big change from the books. And going back, because I read Eye of the World recently, I went back and read Eye of the World just before, was that one of the biggest changes there is that when Moyrane shows up to Edmund's Field, she's basically like, hey, one of you might be the Dragon Reborn, right? In the books, she just tells them some Trollocs came here and tried to come after y'all. I don't know why.
Mm-hmm.
So you better come with me. And that's why they come. And so she doesn't say anything about the dragon being reborn or even Rand being the Dragon Reborn until the very end of the book. It's literally the last sentence. Dragon will ride again, right? Even when the big thing is that Rand channels, he doesn't even know then, I must be the Dragon Reborn, right? Exactly. That's not a thing. And so I'm sorry, I'm going far ahead, but one of my criticisms there is that one of the things I never got from this series, and going back to Rand, was the absolute horror that people have of a man channel, right? And I thought we did a great job with Logain. I thought they were going to go into that. But people who hear a man channeling, there's a line in book 2 where Matt says, that's like finding out that your best friend murdered baby, right? A man channeling makes people, it makes somebody say, I throw up. Right? The very idea, because of the breaking, because of the horror of it all, right? That a man, just saying that a man can channel is enough to make people run for a hill. You show up and tell them, hey, one of you might also be the Dragon Reborn. People should start eating their hands. The Dragon Reborn is considered like being told you're the Antichrist.
Yeah.
And I thought that the Edmonds Fielders were like, oh yeah, one of us might be that. That's kind of cool. And I was like, what?
Well,
No,
this is a perfect jumping off point, because we'll get into episode one.
That was I thought that was a great big change. I wanted to see what they were going to do with it, but it was always a change that needled me.
Yeah.
And I don't know if that had to do something with the way the show ended and with the character drafts, like deciding to tell people right off, that's what I'm looking for. It's a big change. And I understand why maybe, but I don't know that they fit it all together.
Yeah. Well, this is a perfect jumping off point. We're going to dig into more characters as they come up, but I think the best way to approach this show is to discuss both the pacing and the plot as the storylines carry forward episode through episode. But the thing that you just mentioned about the Dragon Reborn being mentioned, this is one of my biggest criticisms of episode 1, and we'll get into it, which was the I guess I'll call it like the dark side of what you call economic world building, in the sense that they're trying to cram so much. And my biggest criticism with episode 1 is they crammed so much into one episode. I felt like it needed to be split in 2. I felt like the season needed to be 2 episodes longer at least. But they just crammed so much in there, and the reasoning for the Emmons Fielders to leave their home didn't feel justified to me, because Moyrane's just like, yeah, I want to use the Dragon Reborn, let's go. And they're like, oh, bye. It's like, don't even like hug your dad, just wave to him. Cool. It just fell so flat for me, because I know the beginning of the book, The Eye of the World, is notoriously slow, but they rushed it way too fast through this first episode. So if anyone else wants to get in with their thoughts on the beginning, sort of like Emmons Field and the 2 rivers, how that was portrayed, but also our introduction to those characters, and then how they're thrust out into the world outside of the 2 rivers.
Well, didn't they initially want to have a 10 episode season?
Budgets, I think.
Yeah.
Something.
So I think that the show was really kind of underserved by cutting it down to 8 episodes, even if it was for reasons of budget. I think the story needed that extra breathing space.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah. Anyone else, like, first thoughts on Emmons Field, 2 Rivers, and how the narrative is sort of blows up, I guess, with Winter's Night and all that crazy shit that happens with the Trollocs and the Fades.
When you're introducing so many characters to a world that could be unfamiliar to the viewers, I almost think that a 2-episode pilot was necessary to maybe flesh out the economic world building a little bit. I think the character development was there for some and could have been built up with others. But yeah, having this done in just the episodes they have just did not pan out, particularly in the first episode.
Because I felt the connection between the Emmons Field 5, you know? This is what was such a shame to me with the 3 boys, is that Rand, Perrin, and Matt have a really good chemistry together. And that was presented in the first episode. You know, they care about their friend, they're willing to give him money, all that kind of stuff. They know about his situation, they empathize with him. But that friendship, that relationship that they have, doesn't really flourish later on. And
not enough to carry them when they leave.
Exactly. And then Nynaeve and Egwene, on the other hand, I felt that connection between the 2 of them, that there was that care and sort of big sister, little sister relationship that was better developed as the season went on.
I mean, you can definitely see that friendship when she pushes her off the cliff straight away.
Yeah. It's like,
BFFs.
Breathe, boom. Yeah, that was a really good moment. Also, just a quick aside, I want to comment, there was a panning shot at the beginning of passing over the landscape, and you see the moss tree plant covered skyscrapers, which was a really cool
that was very cool.
A cool nod to what appears later on in the show.
Definitely. I thought I was the only one who got that. I'm glad. I was like, everybody seeing that? Yeah. I think the fact that
it was like it was frame for frame. It was perfectly matched to episode 8. Yeah.
this is a fantasy, but it's also post-apocalypse. And I
Exactly.
think that that's something that, and it may even be, if you listen to Jordan, may even be Earth, right? According to his little, I went back and I listened to some of those things, and I was like, oh, those myths they're talking about, like Lynn who rode to the moon on an eagle's egg. Oh, that's supposed to be a rocket ship, and Glenn. And so it's like these things that we could be looking at Earth in some far, 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 far flung future where everything's gone medieval.
Exactly. And then just
Yeah.
the way that it went medieval, the look of it was very good, very cool.
Mhm.
I loved the set design of Emmons Field was great. Just the feel of it, it didn't feel so typical fantasy. It had enough
Yeah.
of a little bit of an extra flavor that made it stand out. And then you had the diversity of the residents. Even if you want to explain it away, and I know some people could have a criticism and say, how is this tight-knit community so diverse in terms of the ethnicities? And it's like, who the fuck cares? It's good. Enjoy it.
Amen.
Yeah.
Speaking of world building, did anyone watch the pieces of world building that they did? They're like the animated versions.
Yeah, like
Because I feel it's kind of like the Animatrix was to the Matrix. It kind of helped, but I don't think. But like, did anybody watch it? Because it really did. It gave you background on the Ogier. It gave you background on the breaking more. It gave you background on Manetheren. I thought that. By the way, it's great that we got to hear the song, the Manetheren bit. And so I think that helped with their world building. I don't know if there was a way they should have told people watch those.
Yeah,
So
I mean, personally for
some of the
me,
stuff in.
that stuff was really cool, but I felt like the cold opening of the first episode felt very flat. It didn't really sell the threat of male channelers.
Yeah,
and
never.
it also didn't really work as that eye-catching grab you by the neck kind of opening that pulls you in and says like, this is what this world is about. And I feel like they should have done something with the history of the world, whether it be the breaking, to give that sort of impact, because I love the opening of the first book. The first book, even though it's quite slow, the prologue is just like shit gone
Loose
awry, and it's so
That prologue
so
is
great.
dense.
Yeah, and I feel like they could have sold the show much better with a better prologue. But
I think that was that episode, the infamous episode 8. The one thing I loved seeing, at least, the Age of Legends, right? And I suppose there was a way they could have. I think they were holding it in reserve.
Mm-hmm.
Right,
but that could have been the pull for people who have never heard of the show, never heard of the world or anything like that. That could be the kind of moment where you're like looking at their dress and looking what happens, and then just utter destruction, and then you come down to this tranquil little village in the middle of the mountains, and that's enough to be in the back of your mind the whole season, thinking, what happened there? How did we get to here? What's going to happen later on in the season? I feel like that's kind of a good hook. But yeah, for me,
I don't know. There's a story called By the Waters of Babylon, and I can't think of the author right now. And it's a very primitive society, and the young man, the protagonist, has to go on his spirit journey, and he's describing things, and you're not quite sure. There's a familiarity about them, but the way it's described through his eyes, you don't get it. And then you realize that you're in New York after a post-apocalyptic event.
Cool.
And that reveal just makes it, you're just your mouth's hanging open. You know, that what you've been seeing is the subway, the New York Public Library, and the skyscraper, where he comes in to this room with this man who's staring out the windows and might have seen the last moments of the world. And just getting that cluing in at the end does a little something. It pricks the soul a little bit.
Yeah,
I think they did Terry. Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
I was just going to say, I think I agree with Patty here in that that reveal that there was some kind of apocalyptic event, the breaking, and that society was so much more advanced. I think that hits a lot harder having gone through 7 episodes in a medieval world, and you wouldn't have that impact if you got that information at the very beginning of the show.
Yeah, that's fair. I mean, I think just from my perspective, I was just kind of speculating on what could have been a better replacement for the cold opening. It's just my problem with the cold opening of the first episode didn't land at all. It didn't sell male channelers. It didn't really sell the Red Aja. It was a bit lackluster for what this world could have offered in those first few minutes of seeing it on screen.
It's strange when you look at it, because we now have the impression that obviously the Red Arch are the villains of the series, or that's how they're trying to angle it for now. It'll be interesting to see if, like, with the show, they do kind of like sagas and introduce villains one after another, or if they just put them in like this big hot pot like they do in the books, where they just all show up at different times and cause a little bit of havoc. And like, okay, yeah, we're dealing with this baddie now again, are we?
Yeah.
But I actually really liked the show and the way that they represented like the whole sort of, there's almost this sort of relationship with nature that the people have. You know, that kind of shows with Emond's Field and how they settled it. I really liked how that came across. But yeah, the whole post-apocalyptic kind of vibe, you do pick up on like small little things if you rewatch it. I've seen a few things come up now every now and then. So they're being quite subtle about it, I think, because they don't want to overwhelm all these new viewers. I mean, it must have been a huge mindfuck for them when you know, they got to that last episode and they saw, you know, the Age of Heroes. That's just mental.
Because, I mean, even in the books, I mean, when they said Age of Legends, I was thinking, well, magical legends, right?
Yeah.
I wasn't thinking like science. I mean, it took me a long time to realize, like, oh, like, okay, you guys were like, wow, like when you said you lost stuff, you really lost stuff. And so, yeah, I think that I didn't have too much of a way. I think I agree with Adrian's thing that the first cold open, just my biggest thing, and I'll go back to it, is what you said. They did not sell the fear that people should have of male channelers, or the absolute dread that anyone should have of being considered the Dragon Reborn. And I think that's important, because it's important for really the rest of the series, how people are going to react to someone being the dragon. And I thought they were going to go there with Logain, while we're going, like, who I thought that was a great way to introduce notions of male channelers. I was hoping they would run with some of that a bit more after that episode, but I didn't see that connection made. Though, I mean, I was happy that whole fight scene with Logain, that, again, another instance where they decided to show us instead of just telling us like the books do, I thought served a good purpose.
Yeah, and
I
also,
agree. The opening was sort of like a cheap Conan, Planet of the Apes.
What were they wearing? I don't even,
you know,
what's
it's kind of
that?
like, I think I'm supposed to be afraid, but I'm not sure if I should be afraid, you know? So, yeah, I agree.
It's a shame they couldn't fit the Statue of Liberty in there, really.
Yeah.
I've been waiting for that line. I've been waiting for it. Somebody say it. Yeah.
They didn't even fit the statue of what's his name, Arthur Hawkwing. They didn't even get that in the steading. It's like, oh man.
No.
I wanted to.
I've always assumed this is supposed to be like we were like the ancient past, and so like the Age of Legends happens like long after us, so they should be in Dune time.
Like thousands of years in the future, man.
Yeah, they're in Foundation time, as far as I understand it. Yeah.
I want to quickly point out Padan Fain was spot on in how he just comes into Emond's Field with that shit-eating grin, and I loved it. It was perfect. And the way that he just kind of he manipulates Matt with his sly talk was awesome. And then obviously we'll get into him later, how he comes back, and how that shows the flip side of his character. But Winter's Night, what did everyone think of the first introduction of Trollocs and the devastation wrought upon the village?
I really liked how we first see them. Like, we're not sure what's happening when Egwene's dance partner just kind of stops and looks horrified, and then you get that pan out to the Trollocs. I thought that was very effective. The Trollocs themselves, I have more mixed feelings about, but just the way they were introduced, I liked.
The visual effects budget was inconsistent, to say the least.
Did anyone feel like the Trollocs got less scary and less threatening as the episodes went on? That's how I kind of felt.
I felt the same.
And it's probably constraints with budget. We know that. But yeah, that kind of it disappointed me a little bit. And I feel like if it was a two-parter pilot, you would actually be able to tease the Trollocs in the first episode, not even have them like wreaking any havoc at that point,
and then have the devastation in episode 2.
Yeah, and they just needed more cliffhangers like that, I think, to really hook people into the show.
I think what made them less scary is there was less real contact. It's the boogeyman that's chasing you versus the boogeyman that's like right there in your room.
Yeah.
I think with fantasy and sci-fi, and when you come to whether you're reading it or you're watching it, there is an ask of suspending your belief. The reader, the viewer is asked, please suspend your belief in what could be real and come into my world. So I loved when the Trollocs came to the village because it was instantly bloody. It was instantly brutal, and it was scary. And I think you lost the scary because now they're just in chase mode. The hounds are behind you, they're barking, but they're not right there at you. And it would have been nice to have a couple of scenes with land fighting, Moyrane struggling to fight, the kids struggling to fight a little bit, and we didn't quite get enough of that. You almost had the ferry boat being a Deus ex machina kind of thing, where they're suddenly safe.
It's like that. It's like that in the books, though.
Well, no one likes getting wet in water.
No, it's just like,
it should have been a little scarier.
I'm sorry, I know we're jumping ahead here, but that scene as well, where the guy's like, I've got to swim back my son. I'm like, there's literally monsters over there. You can see them.
Exactly.
And he's like, I've got to swim to them. I was like, you are swimming to your death.
Yeah. Well, quickly, Phenderson, if you wanna give your first impression of the Trollocs and what Winter's Night felt for you.
I don't know what everyone else has said about the Trollocs. What can I say? I mean, everyone I think who was watching this was waiting for the Trollocs. Your show is only going to be as good as your baddies, right? And so your fantasy is you need your resident mooks who you can kill without concern. I was a little upset I didn't get to see Narg. Everybody remember from the book, Narg's smart, the talking Trolloc. Yeah. So I understand. I was like, yeah, you can't get CGI for Narg, I guess. Okay. And so I was happy that we got to see the battle, as I said before, the Battle of Winter Night, which we were just told before. That helped, I think, Moyrane and land more than it helped the Trollocs. I was mixed on the Trollocs. Like, there were times when I was like, oh, wow, yeah, those are Trollocs. They're dressed a little differently than I thought. They kind of have this whole BDSM thing going on.
Let's not get started on the BDSM stuff in the show.
Where I thought they were going to have, like, chainmail and stuff. Yeah. But, okay. They had hooves, and I keep trying to keep in mind, look, they don't have Peter Jackson money for this, right? They've got what they have, and so I was willing to look. You this isn't Game of Thrones where you can save up all your money for the dragons. Like, got a lot of magic here, and you got a lot of creatures, and so I was like, I was accepting of the Trollocs for the most part. There were some times they looked a little cheesy and too CGI-ish. And there were other times they looked okay, and I just accepted them for kind of what they were. Have we talked about the fades yet, the mid-roll?
No, let's get into the phase. But quickly, I just want to say, you just mentioned the budget thing. I think that's why they didn't include the Drakkar, which were very cool in the books. It was like these kind of dragon-ish creatures.
Like vampire. Yeah, maybe they're coming later.
Yeah. But those, for me, that was like a cool threat while they were being chased, because they actually swooped down, and it felt like an antidote to what you were saying, Patty, about them being chased by this threat that didn't really feel threatening. But
though they cut so much of the chase because they cut so many places they went. We never really got to see them, like, I don't know, their chase was short. Like, they're a shadow logo.
It was a couple of minutes.
It takes a long time for them to get there.
It was a couple of minutes for them to get to Terran Ferry, and in the books it was chapters and chapters. But let's get to the fades, and then let's get to that moment at Terran Ferry.
I thought, by the way, we got to see more the horrors of the Trolloc with Nynaeve's scene. Yep. I thought maybe that created scene with Nynaeve where they're like, the Trollocs will eat each other. Yeah,
exactly.
That's right. Or like the fact that the Trollocs eat people, they're going to put you in your cook pot. Like, I won't say, sorry, going back to the scene at Winter Night, I thought there was a way that it was shot well when Matt goes back out, where it's almost the camera's following them, and it reminded me of the Game of Thrones episode where the dragon was attacking, and it's just this shaky camera, and you're trying to just seeing like it's horror, like it's going on everywhere.
That camera felt like Children of Men to me as well.
Like that. Yeah, I like that. Like, you don't know, like, anything's going on in the corner, and you're just like luck if you're not like snatched, like the way Nynaeve is just snatched, right? The mid-draw, it's like, look, the eyeless, the look of the eyeless is fear. I'll have to say this. I at times I didn't mind the mid-draw. I mean, I had to get used to the shrieking thing, because I was like, and that's where in the books, fades, they talk a lot of shit.
Mm-hmm.
Like before they kill you, they like I'm gonna kill you, you know, and I'm gonna walk slow and do it because you're frozen with fear, and I'm gonna do this and that. And this one, they just kind of shriek. And they have all those teeth. And I thought there was a little too much Lord of the Rings Nazgul going on there with the fades. And I would have liked to see the regular fade who looks like a person, except, you know, they have no eyes and they're just really fearful. And so, and the black chainmail, what happened to like and so I thought like, I don't know, I was like, y'all spent a lot of probably CGI money to do that mouth and all the teeth. And they didn't frighten me to say the way that I thought a fade should. Though the one scene where the fade fights Tom, I thought, that's a fade.
That
catching the dagger out of the air, the way he like, you kick him back, he just slides forward. I was like, I would love to see a bit more of that, rather than the streaky guy.
I agree.
All the time. So I'm mixed feelings on the baddies. I'm like letting it be what it is because I realize, you know, again, budgets. Though I wouldn't have chosen shrieking over a good dude who talks a lot of shit. And you would have saved money. You could have used that money to make Loyal's air twitch or fix his hair.
They
we'll get into Loyal later. Well, let's.
I'm just saying for budget. I'm just trying to budget here for them. I'm just trying to like show them where they could save some money and put it somewhere else. That's all.
Yeah, I feel like they could have done that a lot in this show. Yeah, Ben.
Oh, I was just going to say that they could definitely do like almost like a Pan's Labyrinth kind of thing with the fades. They can just look quite creepy, still quite humanoid. Casting probably cheaper as well, like you said. It's easily done. Can I also just say how bang on point
because
the
moment
has been pretty much this entire season. Yeah, and you know, for Winter's Night, I thought it was absolutely perfect.
Yeah, I mean the music has added to the tension throughout the whole thing. The scene at Terran Ferry was amplified by that, but it all kind of fell flat for me when that stupid ferryman just decided to jump back in the water and try and save his. It's like Ben, you said, there's fucking Trollocs across there just growling. It doesn't matter. Your son's dead. Like, I understand.
It definitely missed out on plot logic.
And then it's just like there's a whirlpool. There's a whirlpool, dude.
Yeah,
just enough.
I mean, I can kind of understand it though, because at this point, haven't the people in that area, like, they don't have a lot of experience with Trollocs. Trollocs are just kind of this nightmare thing that they hear about in scary stories, but they don't think they really exist. So yeah, you can see that there are these monsters, and you can be told that they're Trollocs, but I don't think the ferryman actually believed that. So he was like, okay, I'm gonna go over it. They're not gonna kill me. You know, maybe they'll beat me up a little bit, but it'll be fine. I just have to go save my son.
Maybe I'm just hallucinating in my grief.
Says no to that. No,
exactly.
no.
I mean, I don't think it's really a smart decision, but I can understand it.
I think the Fade were scary just for scary's sake. You know, being a D&D player, when you say Mind Flayer, everybody gets real quiet at the table. Real quiet. And I think that's what the Fade should be. And the Shriek thing, I'm okay with it if it's to control the Trollocs, but if you really want to make them scary, they need to communicate in some way, whether it's telepathically or some quiet voice. I mean, even the Nazgul can speak, you know, Shire or whatever, those sorts of things that they would say.
That was one of the scariest things from Lord of the Rings, right?
Yeah. So I sort of think they missed their cue on that one too, to make them very, very frightening. Because again, there are certain creatures in the Dungeons and Dragons world that no matter when you started playing, if you say that, they're going to get real Beholder. Running, one of those kinds of things. And I didn't get that feel when the Fade came on. I'm like, you look scary, but I'm not sure if I should really be afraid of you yet.
Exactly, because for me personally, the Fade's lack of communication, lack of that aspect didn't really give me the sense that this is just a very powerful sentient creature, as opposed to just something that screeches.
It didn't translate that they were controlling the Trollocs, you know, and that would have elevated them. They just appear to be like another minion.
Whereas, you know, moving on to Shadar Logoth, that to me felt more threatening than the Fades, because the city itself felt I mean, while there were some cheesy effects in the Shadow Logoth scene, the city itself felt just heavy and
Epic.
yeah,
Felt epic.
but also creepy. There's just this like
Yeah.
creepy factor
Mhm.
to the emptiness of it.
The series was successful there where the last 3 Star Wars movies failed. For me, the Millennium Falcon is a character. C-3PO, R2-D2, Chewbacca, all characters. They all became furniture in the sequel. And here you have this city that is itself a character, just haunted and atmospheric. And you just have the feeling they had more fear and menace than the Trollocs did. And nothing really epic happened that the city did. You just had the feeling, I don't want to be here with y'all, and you need to pack your
Yeah.
shit and you need to leave now. And they didn't. You know, I always giggle in the horror movies, you know, that black people die first, you know, and I'm like, I'm getting in the car now and leaving before the demons come and get you. I'll be at the
Yeah.
hotel. Call me, and I'll decide
Yeah,
who's coming to
call
get you. Exactly. And that was the
Well, where's
feeling I
Patricia?
had.
Oh, I'm across the street.
Run, sweet heron, run.
Please.
Yeah, I'm out of there.
Bye.
I'm at home with the staff. I don't know what you're doing. Yeah, but you know, I like the way Shadow Logoth looked, and I didn't mind it. Talking about things that were missing. There's no Mortis. I think trying to explain evil Tom Bombadil would have just been too much. So I got like cut him out. Let's not go into all that. And yet, I think we're going to have to revisit it somewhere because
Yes.
at the end, is that where Matt is? And is Padan Fane holding a ruby-hilted dagger? Are we missing something that happened?
I thought Matt was back at Tarvalon,
I think
not
he was
at
at
Shadar
Tarvalon.
Logoth.
Yeah.
Oh, he was at Tarvalon.
Yeah.
Then did Padan Fane have the dagger with him? I know.
No, there's no distinct moment
Because
where
he has
picks
a
it up.
ruby-held dagger that he's holding to their neck.
I did think that he had the dagger.
But it doesn't show how he got it.
How'd it happen?
Exactly.
Had they had
I mean,
a dagger like that or had the dagger,
missed?
I wasn't sure.
We'll have to look
Because
up
I
some
was like,
deleted
maybe that's
scenes.
the only way that he can go around holding loyal. Like it's the thing,
Yeah.
right? If you got that dagger, you can do a whole lot. You know,
got that dark
I'm
power
like
flowing
not
through
gonna. You got the dagger with you, and so I don't know. That's a question, but I'm figuring. I know Shadow Logoth has to come back later on in the book, so it is its own character. It's going to be there again, and so I'm hoping they really revisit things more in Mashadar. Who got a little bit? They got a little bit of stuff there, but you know, did that horse in. Now in the books, it's interesting because in the books it's a long scene and there are Trollocs there, and remember they have those like hoops that they're about to put over people's necks and snatch them down, and all that they got rid of. So we got to see Shadow Logoth a little bit, and I thought that was deep. That was good.
Yeah, but the escape was a bit cheesy for me, just with that black. I don't even know what it was, like goo kind of thing, just chasing after everybody. It's like, yeah, okay, but it was
Mashadar. Yeah, Mashadar did not. Mashadar and the Black Wind were a little.
VFX,
I was expecting like a lost
you-
smoke monster or something like that, but
Yeah. The sentient evil blobs both got a little.
Stop
A little
it.
evil amoeba. I don't know.
Yeah, evil. Have we talked about Mashinshin? No, we haven't talked.
We'll get
evils.
to it. But now that we have all the characters on their different plot lines, we can talk about Matt and Rand as Matt is succumbing to the corruption of the dagger, and also just like tons and tons of things that were cut from their storyline. I'm thinking White Bridge was completely cut and replaced with this little village, which worked in some ways.
Mining village.
Yeah, just like a little mining village. And then their whole purpose was to get to Camelin, but Camelin was replaced with Tarvalon.
Barillon is gone.
Barillon's gone. So
there's no meeting Elaine and Gawain and all
at the
that,
inn, at the inn and everything in Barillon, there was none of that. So what did everyone think about these cuts? And then we'll focus on Matt and Rand.
Min for some reason is hanging out at the border.
Like,
you have all the places I'm going to find Min Farshar. I'm just not figuring it's like a few miles from the Black.
Exactly.
That's just me.
Exactly.
But I get you got to put her in somewhere. That's not a Min Farshar hangout. Like I'm gonna go hang out at the Borderlands.
Exactly. Because the people look.
Where there are Trolloc raids every day.
Because she's an Asian actress.
Why
and
not?
the people up in Faldara are more Asian.
Yeah, I guess so. They put it where all the Asian people are.
Exactly.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking they did. I was like, please tell me you didn't try that one.
I do know.
But
Bad idea.
what did everyone think about Rand and Matt's storyline and Matt's corruption and all that kind of stuff.
I thought they had some really good like one-liners. I liked that. Matt and his corruption storyline, I just don't. It frustrates me so much. This is a problem with the book, less so with the show because it is over a lot faster. But I actually tried reading the books like a decade ago, and I stopped because of Matt. I was so frustrated with him that I just put the books down and I couldn't pick them up.
Such a jackass.
Yeah, like he's a jerk. He's mean. You don't want to read about that.
Means very, yeah.
So
But that's the dark
didn't
one.
really enjoy that.
That's his power. It just makes you a dick.
But I've often wondered if Jordan didn't have Matt down. Kind of like how, like, if you watch like the first Star Treks, like they didn't have Riker or Worf down, and it wasn't until they didn't have Benjamin Sisko down, but then he got the goatee, and you're like, that's Ben Sisko in Deep Space Nine. It felt like Matt was not fully down. So I hear what you're saying, Sarah. Like in the books, he's just like creepy with that. He's just a creepy guy.
Yeah, no,
he's creepy.
I completely agree with you that I don't think Jordan really knew what he was doing with Matt until later on in the series.
Jordan
and then you get the Matt
with a lot of things.
Yeah.
Matt is a completely different person, yeah.
Yeah. So for that reason, you know, the Matt and Rand plotline I was less interested in just because I find less interest in it in general.
Yeah. What about the introduction of Tom Marilyn and Dark Friends? The concept of Dark Friends.
You mean
I liked
Daddy
the
Tom
Dark
Marilyn?
Friends.
His singing sounds like Bruce Springsteen. I was like, that's actually not that bad.
Yeah, that was interesting. Did anybody notice he lacked a lot of whiskers?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
We also got Dark Tom, which again, it seemed like it's like the default of this show is like, let's just add some dark.
Throw a fucking dagger through her throat.
It's like, let's just add some dark.
Yeah.
And I was like, and I don't know, it's just like you can make things a bit more complex without doing that with every single person. And so now he's dark. And Matt's dark. I was like, well, who isn't dark?
Yeah.
Everyone's a little dark, right? And so I didn't mind this character. I didn't mind their relationship. I mean, in the books, they're on the road for a long time.
From the beginning.
I realized
Tom is there from the get-go.
They cut a lot of Tom teaching them how to. I mean, I get that a lot of it has to be cut because the book was a bit more YA than this show is, and so you know, them being on the road, they did what they had to do to be on the road and get caught up. And it was a typical fantasy thing. Okay, you guys are alone. Let's wait for you to get back with everyone, and then things will pan out. And you know, it was interesting seeing the Dark Friend. I gotta say, and I said this in my blog. So far, like the Dark Friends are all black.
They are dark indeed.
And the the two most evilest characters are all very dark skinned. And so I was like, I know you guys are good at doing the diversity, but your Children of the Light guy is Darcy and Pat and Fane, and they're like the two really, really worst characters that we've met. And I know you guys are doing diversity, and it's great that you are, but you know, diversity is a thing where you need to hire someone so that they don't like, let me explain colorism to you. And so we can make sure you don't fall down some of these pit holes. And so I saw it. People I know who know nothing about the show, they did the squinty eye, like, why are the two most evilest characters really dark?
Yeah.
As human characters I've met so far. And so, you know, I'm hoping that somebody like pulled them to the side and said, we have to do something. And then the other dark friend was a mixed race black woman and with a shot through the throat. So
I think it was
that's my quibble.
I think that build up towards that was not entirely successful, but interesting, and the way that she came off so innocent. Obviously she wants to get out of town. How's she gonna get out of town? The Dark One's gonna sponsor her.
Yeah.
And the way that all developed, her character came across in an interesting way, and then it revealed a couple small tidbits about Rand in terms of the fact that he could knock down this door that 3 men couldn't knock down. But I felt Matt's development wasn't very interesting. He just, you know, kind of came across as a moody little shit, and I'm not gonna chop wood, like, do it your fucking self, Rand. And
I did enjoy
I
enjoyed Tom giving like Matt that humble pie moment with the Aiel. But if you steal from him, you bury it.
But Tom would never steal though.
Yeah.
That doesn't feel like Tom to me. He felt like some I don't know, like some Pennsylvania coal miner jamming away.
He was not a very gleeful gleeman.
No,
That's
not
what
at
I
all,
got to
man.
say.
Tom was much more
You
jovial.
needed that
in the
patchwork
books.
cloak on the
Where's the
outside.
coat? Yeah.
It was on the inside. It was like on the in-stitching, but you want to see on the outside, don't you?
Covered up with something gray and dark.
Yeah.
But that
Make it
again was
edgy.
a lost opportunity for Tom to do some character development for Matt, and it
Yeah.
just didn't happen. You know, and as far as the Dark Friends, they were about as underdeveloped as the whole channeling men thing. Just wasn't enough time spent with them, or to give that menace of what they were.
Yeah, I agree.
The only good thing I thought they did with the Dark Friends was, I suppose, for the first time, the Dark Friends had reasonings. Like, she had this emotional reason, like the wheel needs to stop.
Yeah.
And that's something like, I want the wheel to stop because we're just living terribly, right?
Yep.
And it was like, if the wheel is stopped. I thought that was interesting. And then Pat and Fane gave that whole Jedi speech at the end. I suppose that's interesting. I don't like
his villain
Jedi
monologue.
raves.
He needed his villain monologue, of course.
We need the dark. And like, okay.
Yeah. And what did everyone think about? We'll get to Moyrane and Lan, and then how Nynaeve converges into their storyline. What did everyone think about that? Actually, just a quick aside. Patty, you mentioned earlier the vulnerability of Moyrane, and I thought that was a good foil for Nynaeve to display her abilities, but also to develop a bit more trust between her and Lan.
Oh, most definitely. And also for Nynaeve to come into her destiny, which is much bigger than what she thinks it is. The fact that she had tracked them, and she talks about how she tracked them, I thought that was so super cool. But I'm still not sure about the whole interplay with the warders and what that's supposed to mean, because some of the other Aes Sedai use their warders as boy toys.
Orgies.
And I don't see that with Moyrane necessarily. And I'm just kind of like confused and watching. But I love Nynaeve, and I just rewatched the scene. One of the best scenes, the only hopeful part of episode 8, was when Nynaeve was talking about going to the tower, becoming an Aes Sedai, and Lan was saying, I will hate the man you choose, but I will love him if he makes you smile. I'm a hopeless romantic. I don't show it. I like blowing up X-Wings and A-Wings. I'm a TIE fighter pilot. But that was
I thought you were a Sith princess. Don't pull that shit.
I am a Sith princess. That's right. With my TIE fighter. Careful. Don't correct me. No. But I just thought that was the most wonderful moment of episode. I can watch that over and over again. We just don't watch the Rand part.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, but the buildup of their romance was good, because it was just small little tidbits throughout, and it was sprinkled and paced in a great way.
And how she brought him back.
Yeah.
They have build up in the show, as opposed to the books.
Yep.
Where it just kind of happens out of the blue.
Yeah. But the like, I agree with you, Patty. The whole thing about the warders and what exactly their relationship is with their particular Aes Sedai is a bit mixed and not really communicated super well. It's like some of them are just like, haha, give you a cheeky look because I'm gonna go fuck my warders, and others is just like, no, this is my best friend, and no touching and all that kind of stuff is a bit.
Don't go to the no place.
Yeah, but I do think that the introduction of that Aes Sedai camp, where they do have Logain imprisoned, was very engaging, and I liked the interplay between the warders. I liked the interplay between the Aes Sedai, because some of them have developed relationships over decades, and others are a bit more antagonistic.
Steppen's loss is palpable.
Yes.
It is just
Steppen was great. But what did everyone think about that whole thing? The Aes Sedai, the warders, Logain, and how all that played out.
So I'm actually, I was really yearning for the same sort of politics game playing you get with the Aes Sedai as you do in the books. And I feel like to an extent we really got that. And it feels like they all have different motivations. We still don't quite know a lot of the characters on the show and what their goals are. I was quite happy that they also shined a lot of light on the warders. I feel like it would have been a bit of a shame if we didn't really understand the Bond as much, or what the Wardens actually did. If the Wardens were just there to swing swords and that's it. I feel like they do a fair bit more. They're actually a major support for the Aes Sedai in this. And Leandrin in that camp as well. That scene with Nynaeve, and she was like, "Hi, are you Nynaeve? Is it pronounced that way?" I was just like, I just love this villain. I think she's going to be great.
The casting for the Red Aja, they went hard with people who had very, very sharp features and angular jaws, and just very, just in the way that the actors themselves look. It's just like, you picked some people with very impressionistic faces and facial features, just to give off that vibe of, yeah, Red Aja look for men. They fucking kill or not. They don't kill them. They, what's the word that they gentle them, exactly. So it's like, these people who gentle do not look very gentle, and I thought that was a nice choice in terms of how they cast the Red Aja. But we mentioned earlier, I think the costuming was a bit ridiculous.
They definitely do, like I said, Power Rangers, different colors and rainbow.
They are not the most fashionable of the Aes Sedai, suddenly. I tell you that much.
No, one of my friends, they have a podcast where they talk about the Wheel of Time, and there was that scene where they stumble across the White Cloaks, and they're like, "Are you an Aes Sedai?" to Moyrane, who's literally all in blue. It's just like, well, no, obviously not, duh. Just pulled a blind eye on them. It's just, in what world can you tell that she's not an Aes Sedai?
It's like, blue brings out my eyes. What are you going to do about it?
Well, I guess if you've gotten rid of the ageless face, maybe I suppose that works, right? Because supposedly you're supposed to be able to tell them immediately.
Exactly.
I mean, I like that episode for a lot of reasons. I like seeing the Taint as two evil things talking in Loghain's ears.
Yeah.
I love the way they did his character.
Like the devil and the angel on Homer Simpson's shoulders.
Yeah, I love that they both are like the angel and Homer. Yeah, they're both like, I thought that was a great way to emphasize it. I thought, it was a great way to show the politics that got us to really see who Aes Sedai were. And I do agree, they didn't fully flesh out what greens are. They gave little hints, but those are more hints for people who've read the books. You get like, oh yeah, it's the greens, like doing wink and nods to their warders. I like that they queered that some, like where the some of the warders themselves are into each other. And so that was all great. And later on, we even see that there are women warders, which is going to be interesting because, Brigitte Silverbow is coming, who, by the way, we got to see that little girl's doll. If anybody caught that one. And so that's going to be, I'm going ahead, but that's going to be interesting. But no, I like that we got to see the Aes Sedai fight. Sometimes it looked a little cheesy, I gotta admit. But sometimes it looked a little cool. They waved their arms around a lot. Yeah. So I guess they just didn't want to show people channeling and you couldn't see it. And so they have people, they had to, I get that. They have to show them doing a lot of martial arts stuff, doing a lot of Tai Chi with their arms in order to get stuff done. There were some little things in the show where, for, I suppose, a book reader, I squinted. I thought, like, the part where Moyrane comes and sees Loghain and she needs to know if he's the dragon.
Yeah.
And I'm like, well, he hasn't fulfilled a whole lot of prophecies that you know about Moyrane. Has a certain place fallen? Has this happened? Why would you think this guy was? Yeah. Right? Like, and so there were like little things that just weren't true to like how things should go. And I was like, and if you guys are letting go of prophecy here, well, the entire series runs on prophecy. Exactly. So that's like impossible.
I felt that.
And there was another thing where we finally see Nynaeve, right? And in the books, like when she first does herself, it's a lot less dramatic. This one, they make it super dramatic. And she has all this light and Loghain sees it. And how does Loghain see her? Like, are we just going that everybody sees auras now? Like everybody can see the Sidene and Sidar being wielded now? Yeah, so that Loghain, because he's like a bright light. Like, I'm sorry, you can see what women can do now. Maybe they've gotten rid of that, and that's fine. I just wish they would have gotten that to us. And that's another thing. I never think they fully explain sometimes, because somebody was watching with me. They're like, can everybody else see those little things happening? I said, they wish they would just let us know that. No, everyone can't see the weaves happening.
Because
only people who can channel can see that.
That's one of my.
So maybe they decided to get rid of the gender binary, and I just want them to tell us.
Yeah, but that's one of my major criticisms with the show. It's like, Loghain was, I think, done really, not really well, but fairly well, and his power was portrayed in a very
with the
cool
taint.
manner. Yeah, with the taint's back, and the way that all of these different Aes Sedai are trying to like struggle with his power was well represented. But there are just so many things about the magic system, about the Aes Sedai and their sort of in groups and all this different kind of stuff, their cliques, if you want to call them that. Some of that stuff is just not conveyed well, and um, I could understand from the perspective of someone who's never read the books that they would just be left at the end of the season feeling confused about a lot of things. Just how does the magic system work? Like you say, can you see the little sparkly magic and all this different kind of stuff? Like, what do the colors mean? Because it's not immediately and effectively conveyed what these different colors are, and that there are these different groups of Aja, and each one has a specific purpose in the sense of politics or healing or what have you. Some of that is cleared up in Tar Valon, but it wasn't effectively portrayed from my perspective. But the Warders, on the other hand, I feel like were broadened in our understanding, and these little details that made me appreciate them much more, especially with Stepan and his relationship with Lan and how that all played out. We'll get into Perrin and Egwene, which is, I feel, the most egregious storyline throughout the whole series. Sarah, do you want to jump in and give us your opinions on Perrin and Egwene and the Tinkers and so many things that were glossed over from the books?
I mean, I definitely do think that Perrin and Egwene suffered from not enough screen time. They just don't get, like, their storyline just doesn't get as developed.
Yeah.
I've seen a lot of criticism on Twitter about the relationship between Perrin and Egwene, and how the accusation that Perrin has feelings for her kind of cheapens his relationship with his wife. And I disagree there a little bit. I think that that just because, and the whole show is kind of about this, right? Just because someone says something doesn't mean that that's actually true. Like, we see that with Moyrane, who believes things but that's not actually the case necessarily. Like, she doesn't have all of the answers. And I think that that's the same thing with Nynaeve. She's seeing this relationship, and because it's unusual, or it's society views it as unusual that a man and a woman can have a close friendship, like, she thinks that there's something romantic there, and there's not necessarily. So I thought that was very believable, but didn't necessarily imply that Perrin has the hots for Egwene and wanted to kill his wife.
Yeah, that's a bit of a stretch for me too. It's like, even if you're married, you can still have feelings for other people, but it's not going to drive you to thrust an axe into your wife's stomach or anything like that, you know? Like, that's a bit too much. For me personally, the Tinkers were, yeah, I mean, they were kind of a gypsy hippie group, and you know, the costuming was fairly good, the way that they had their carriages and everything like that, but I just wasn't really sold on everything that they were doing, and how they were explaining the way of the leaf and all this kind of stuff. And it felt a little ham-fisted to have Perrin's, you know, murder of his wife, and then his darkening mood, his brooding, just being paired with the way of the leaf, and violence is not the way, and it didn't work for me. It didn't sell it. It didn't feel like the Tinkers were convincing enough to convey their way of living to Perrin, who did something really messed up, but then he didn't have what was absolutely necessary for me as a foil for his character, which is Elias in the books, who is the one who really helps him understand where his inherent violence and aggression comes from, and how he's linked to wolves and all this in all these different ways. But yeah, it just didn't really sell me. And Egwene felt like she was along for the ride during this part of the show. She didn't really have much purpose other than interacting with the that young tinker who
Aram.
Yeah.
Oh, poor Aram. I don't want to give it away, but every time I see Aram, I'm like, oh, Aram. Oh, Aram.
Yeah.
That's all I gotta say.
Yeah.
Sarah knows what I'm talking about. Yeah.
So
Aram.
So for me, it just didn't really work. Perrin's journey in understanding his relationships to wolves and the lack of Elias, and then the Tinkerers it just felt forced to me that it's like, Perrin is the character struggling with violence. Let's put him with these people who are going to explain a way of nonviolence. And yeah.
And then he buys it. He buys into it wholesale, which just was not believable at all.
Exactly.
And I totally agree with Sarah, as far as Perrin liking Egwene, and I don't want to call it settling, for his wife, but that's what it may have been. That's real. That happens. Dante Alighieri wrote the Inferno for Beatrice, who was not his wife, okay, out of love for her. So that also gives a depth of character to him that I don't think they developed at all. And that tragedy that could have been there, always been there, as he sees the relationship between Egwene and Rand erode and all its high roads and low roads. So I'm with you on that, Adrian, as well, with the Tinkerers, the Way of the Leaf. Cool, interesting, maybe not enough of it, but Perrin buying into it, nah, wasn't sold.
Yeah. But the White Cloaks, on the other hand, yeah. Matt, Ben or Phenderson, you want to get in on the White Cloaks? Phenderson, you and Ben both have smiles on your faces. I want to hear what you got to say.
So, I mean, I'm sorry, I have to go back to Perrin and like nothing about Perrin. And again, it's my bias. Like people are like, don't compare it to the books. I'm sorry, I can't compare it to an artichoke. I think people only do that with fantasy, right? People aren't like, oh, did you compare the Romeo and Juliet movie to that thing that guy Shakespeare wrote? Like, that's foolish.
The movie with Leonardo DiCaprio was a masterpiece.
Right. Even if I understand that it changes. And so I look for like the changes like Land. I thought the change to Land was great. I thought there were changes to Moyrane and I thought those enhanced the story. I thought it brought out a greater truth to the story, of the largest truth Jordan was trying to tell. I did not see any of that with Perrin's character. Perrin's character. Perrin's character was changed and altered to such a degree that I didn't see it adding anything to the storyline. I didn't see it bringing anything out. Even the little love triangle bit, like when they have the little blow up there in the I'm like, am I stuck in like some kind of Dawson's Creek? What's going on? Where am I?
It did feel very CW.
Blow up with each other, and they're like, oh, I see what it is. I'm like, oh, stop it.
Rand is Dawson and Perrin is
and then they
Tracy.
just all, and then it's all good right after, but they were just angry for a bit. I'm like, come on, guys. And so I didn't buy that. If they were going to go there with him being married and then him killing his wife, if the payoff was with the White Cloaks, that was supposed to be it. Like, well, then he shows that he gets his absolution. I was like, that's hacky. That's like, that was a poor, I did that just for that. And just to show him being dark and the Way of the Leaf. I don't know. And then he never is himself. He never feels like himself. Like at the end, because he's, like you said, Patricia, he's kind of bought into it. He's like, oh, I guess I'll just let Pat and Fane take off with the Horn of Valere. I was going to throw something at the television set. Just going to, the entire book 2 is you guys hunting for that thing. And people are going to be like, hey, Perrin, what were you doing when Pat and Fane was here with the thing? Oh, I was just standing there. His words caught me. I was like, what are you doing? And so I don't know. Like the character they've created for him just does not fit anything that I understand how Perrin in any way should be, and it's throwing me off because I'm like, I don't know who this guy is. I guess you call him Perrin, but he doesn't feel anything like Perrin, and I don't know why they felt the need to do it because it hasn't helped the storyline. By the way, I've met no one, people who haven't read the books, people who have read the books who are like, yeah, that Perrin guy, really connected with him. Nobody.
And I like Perrin from the books too. He's a great character in the books.
Oh yeah, no.
But really quickly, the White Cloaks. They're very White Cloaky. I used to call them. I call them the Clan Cloaks. So I always say like they're the closest thing the book has to the Ku Klux Klan. They're like religious bigots, and they're like the worst thing you want to see happening. And I thought they were even. I gave my colorism spiel before about even Valda. I thought there was still the way that their threat and how terrible they are came across. I quibble a bit that they're going around chopping off Aes Sedai hands, unless she's like the weakest Aes Sedai there. I mean, the White Cloaks, in the books, they do run a certain part of that world. They are dangerous. Like, Aes Sedai say stay away. They might shoot you in the back with an arrow. I don't know if they're big and bold enough to go around, just snatching up Aes Sedai and chopping off their hands. But I get that the show is trying to convey the terror of them, and they're trying to put the Aes Sedai almost in this Salem witch hunt kind of position. And I get that. I thought there was a way in, perhaps for me, empowering the White Cloaks to that degree, diminish the Aes Sedai a bit. But that's just me. But other than that, I thought, they're terrible.
Yeah, I mean, there had to be some minor antagonist, and
yeah,
they create more tension for Perrin and Egwene's storyline than anything else that they went through. It's like, oh, the wolves are following you. You can't even see them, but there's some howls and stuff. Oh, there's a mist. Let's go into the mist. Oh, there's Tinkers in there. Cool. It's like, oh, okay. Yeah. Anyone else with some thoughts on the White Cloaks?
I mean, yeah, Perrin and Green definitely had the backseat in this show, and that White Cloaks plotline as well. There was a really cringy bit for me, which was where they washed Egwene. I was just, I really struggled to watch that. They just make them seem so absolute and villainous. I think they've kind of like hit on the collar, because we know that they're pretty much just really frightening people in the books, actually.
Mm-hmm.
Heretics, people you don't really want to go near.
Yeah, but in the show, it's like they work to some degree, but I feel that I don't know, the way the menace was presented, it wasn't really deserved. There was menace, yes, but it's not really explained fully why they are the way they are, why the Children of the Light are looking for the Aes Sedai in this context, why this one particular guy is so menacing with his ring, other than the fact that I don't know why they do this a lot with villains. They just make them eat in really uncomfortable ways and have you feel like, oh, this person's really creepy because they're eating this way, and that just didn't really work for me. I feel like the White Cloaks in the book were better represented, and we'll see where it goes over the course. But obviously the wolves come in and just feast
on them.
Yeah, eat the steaks off of people's shoulders or what have you.
I don't know. I feel like in the books we have a little bit more lead time to get to know the White Cloaks before that. Like, we hear about them more before we see them. And so there's time for that build up to occur. Yep. And you don't have that in this first season. So I think that this is one of the areas where it'll really benefit from more seasons. And like, as the show, more episodes. And as the show goes on, it'll have time to develop, and we'll see why we should think they're villains and what their motivation is. But there's only so much you can do in an 8-episode first season.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Which is why,
and I think,
go ahead, Phenderson.
So I would say, like, I'm just jumping around here, but we're trapped so much in that 8-episode season. Like Sarah said, there's so much stuff that's not built up.
Mm-hmm.
Like the Eye of the World itself, even though they've made the Eye of the World something completely different. Yeah. The Eye of the World doesn't get built up enough for me to be like, okay, even though I know that's the name of the Facebook, like in the books, they drop it in, like there's things that are happening, why the Eye of the World is mentioned. And if you want to give another one, the Horn of Valere. The Horn of Valere just kind of like, oh yeah, what are you digging up there? I'm digging up the Horn of Valere. Oh, is that what you're doing? You're just digging up the Horn of Valere? She's going to throw that at me now at the last episode, in the last few minutes? What's wrong with you? Like in the books, it's like, it's a song. It's bought up. Everybody knows there are hunters for the horn. It's like, no, I was like, somewhere, guys, you got to give me guideposts along the way. Yeah. Nobody has any idea why that thing is important. It just shows up. And then Perrin, of course, yes, everyone knows, impetuous Perrin, who always acts without thinking. No, Perrin doesn't do that. Hey, let's just take the horn and blow it. Yeah, that's the most un-Perrin-like thing I have ever seen, ever. And so I do think, I think part of this was the 8-episode problem. It's like, you guys just dropped some things on us, like White Cloaks, and there's never a chance to build it up so that we could see
it. Really needed to be 12 episodes. Yeah. If anything less, it definitely needed to be 12.
Yeah. because after all their storylines converge, we have them converge in Tar Valon. They completely skipped over Camelin from the books. And Tar Valon, I don't think showed up until book 2, correct?
Yeah.
Yeah, that was in the Great Hunt that came up first, but I mean, I understand why.
So does Swan.
Yeah,
but, I mean, I thought they did a good job bringing her in here.
Yeah, but it's kind of interesting because I felt the episode, I think it was episode 6, was when they really honed in on the Warders, the Aes Sedai. We have everyone in Tar Valon. You get a sense of the politics and everything that's going on. You get Moraine's relationship with Siuan Sanche and the inner workings of the Aes Sedai and how the Amyrlin seat works. And that episode was great, and I felt like it got the time that it deserved to build out and flesh out its ideas. But then after that, in episode 7 and 8, things just felt so rushed, and it was like boom, 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 through all these different things. And I was like, where's all that pacing from episode 6? Where's all that time and care from episode 6? And you guys just fucking dump through like the last chunk of the book in order to get to that finale in episode 8.
I also, going back a little bit to Moiraine and Swan, I love that they made their relationship explicit.
Yeah.
Because it's only really hinted at as having happened in the past, like a relationship of convenience in New Spring. So I love that they get this relationship, and you see that it's really loving and caring, and you feel like they do have this history together.
Yeah.
It was
I love
real.
that we got to see Swan's backstory.
Yeah, exactly. That was a really good cold open.
Father, the Dragon's Fang. I thought those were great. Like you're right, and those are great. It's a world building. So they tell us everything. Like, you know, how women can channel, how that's a problem, and why she has to go off, and how she comes from this low background. Though it conflicts later on. It conflicts with Nynaeve saying earlier, yeah, my mentor went to the White Tower, but she was poor and they didn't let her in.
I think see, I think that's another case of what the characters are saying they might believe to be true, but like
maybe so.
They're unreliable narrators. They don't have the whole story.
Yeah.
So that's, you know, she believes that, but that's not necessarily what happened.
I hope so. I hope, Sarah, I'm going to go with you and say the show folks knew what they were talking about. Just like when they had call Luz Theron the Dragon Reborn. I'm figuring like you guys know what you're doing.
Like, he ain't been reborn
the Dragon Reborn when he's the dragon. Nobody could have made that big a mistake, and nobody in the set was like, gonna have to film that one over.
Yeah.
So I agree with you, Sarah. It has to be that there are bigger plans. They understand it. And the show, because you're right, the book works a lot on rumor, right? People never fully understand what's happening. Yeah.
But that's how lore and prophecy works. It's all
right.
Yeah.
It's a game of telephone, essentially.
And I think it makes a lot of sense that the characters don't have all of the information. They might think they do. But this is book 1 in a 14-book series. Season 1 in a however long show. And so they're going to make mistakes. You know, they're not going to know what's actually going on.
I mean, Robert Jordan himself made mistakes. So and he admitted it too. He's like, the ending of Eye of the World was
I did love Swan's character in background.
And I think Tar Valon itself was like the CG that they did for Tar Valon was actually quite good, and it convinced me with, once we get down to street level, all the hustle and bustle that's going on, all the different people.
That's where all the budget went.
Yeah, exactly. Logain.
It looked like one of those cities they did on Star Trek Next Generation or something, or the Voyager visits. It was, but like much well done and much more well done.
Yeah, and then Logain being pulled through the streets was great.
And Patrick Fane being kind of like creepily around.
Exactly, that was
kind of hanging around.
That was
By the way, you said before that Patrick Fane's character was spot on, and there's another change. That Patrick Fane is very changed to me from the book's Patrick Fane, because I mean, maybe it hasn't happened yet in the book. He comes across as like almost an addict, like he's whiny, or he's like back and forth. And this guy seems much more controlled. And I don't know if the actor probably said, I'm not doing that guy.
Yeah.
But I'm going to be like the suave Pattern Fane.
Yeah.
So yeah, I like that as well.
Yeah, but the most egregious, I think, representation of any character in this show was Loyal.
Do it.
I love him so much.
Precious Loyal.
Oh, he was just like dumpster fire, man. I don't even know.
I think the actor is great.
The actor was great. Yeah.
Oh, the actor was outstanding. He nailed what he was given.
He did not look like Loyal in the least.
No, he was essentially all of his. I mean, this is something that I loved about Perrin's storyline in the books. Is Perrin and Egwene, they visit a steading. They don't know it's a steading, but then they end up at a steading with the statue, like the broken statue of Arthur Hawkwing. And that was a good foreshadowing of meeting Loyal later on in the books. And the way that Rand is introduced to him is much more interesting. You know, just like the conversations that they have. I love there was really good world building and character development just between Rand and Loyal, and the fact that they bond in this library. And the way that the show represented it, it was just very quick and
Casual.
casual without explanation. Oh, this is an Ogier. And it's like, okay. And Rand doesn't really seem to have any reaction to it that much in the books. He's just
like, we haven't heard of Ogiers existing before.
Exactly.
You said nobody's pointed them out. So another thing that just kind of jumps out at you, like, here's an Ogier.
Yeah. And so there's no explanation of what Ogier are. And then the way he looks is just cheesy. The actor, as you mentioned, Ben, is great, but the costume, it's
and
they said, again, this is a budget thing. They literally said they could not, they thought of CGIing him and they could not.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know, maybe they should have called up whoever did the puppet stuff for like something like, come on in, Jim Henson folks. We need some help.
Phenderson, take some water. The salt level's going up. You need to have some water.
We're in the ocean now. We're in the ocean, Patty.
But you're like the way he guess where I was? I was in the gardens and I found I was in the gardens of Tar Valon. And look what it's like. He was just like a MacGuffin character. It's like, my job is to get Nynaeve to you.
Yeah.
Right? And my job, it's like he had no real role there. And it just, you're right. It just didn't. There were times it felt like Loyal, but then there were other times it just didn't. Did he even mention Master Hammond?
No.
Once?
No.
Or anything?
And for me, what's most devastating for his character is he had a distinct purpose in the books of being the guide through the ways.
Yes.
He was the one who opened the Waystone.
Open it.
Yeah. And so they just took that all away from him and took away all of his purpose in the show. And it's just like, oh,
okay. They wanted to do the dark Stargate version of the portal, which we've all seen. We've all seen the dark portal. That's why I loved their version of Awaygate. It's a little different, right? It's
I did read an interview where Rafe was saying that the opening of the Waygate isn't necessarily changed. Like, you see Padan Fain with when he exits the Waygate, you see him with a leaf. So there might be something there still. My judgment's reserved there. I agree that not having Loyal open it was.
But once again, Sarah, it's just another thing that's left unexplained, and for a casual viewer, they're just going to be lost and think like, okay.
I mean,
does Loyal call them all Taverine? Has that been done?
He called one of them Taverine. I think he called Nynaeve. I can't remember which character he called Taverine, but he did mention it at one point.
He's the one who really introduces that, keeps that term fresh in our heads in the first book.
Yeah.
And isn't this? I can't remember. I know his purpose in the books is like, I'm going with you because I want to write. I want to jot all this down.
Exactly. Yeah. So his purpose.
That's I'm not just called. Like, that's why I'm going. Yeah. That's why I'm here.
He's a librarian. He wants to tell that story.
He wants to
live the story.
He wants to conserve the history and
that's his point. Yeah. And he's also a great person who talks about history.
Yep.
And I thought they were going to do that when he identifies Rand as Aiel, because that's kind of in the book there.
Yeah.
He doesn't ever get that conveyed so much of what they know. He was he's a perfect focal point to world building, which is I'm surprised they didn't use him. Because he knows so much of the past more than other than the Aes Sedai. He's one of the a repository. He knows everything.
Oldest lived.
He's a perfect. He's a perfect deserving info dumper. It's like, you can info dump and I'm happy to hear you or read you.
Yeah, and you can listen to Loyal info dump. Yeah, and it's just that was a wasted opportunity.
Yeah.
Yes.
Definitely.
Before we get into the final 2 episodes, I just want to touch on the cold open of episode 7, which was the Aiel, which was fucking great. It's like combat pregnancy, just kicking ass. So good. What did everyone think about that, and sort of how that played into the reveal of Rand being the Dragon Reborn?
It was fantastic.
Yeah, fantastic.
Yeah.
I love a good sword fight, and the fact that she was trying to have a baby in between. Oh my goodness, it was wonderfully choreographed,
And
awesome.
she was kicking ass.
Yeah.
She was really kicking ass. Oh,
I was on the edge of my seat and just gripped by it. I was like, "Oh my god, we're really going there!"
Exactly. And I had just like my heart stopped
awesome.
when the guy stabbed her in the side, and I was just like, "Don't! Oh no! I know Rand lives, but it's just like that baby. No."
and I get that part of it. That was really scary. But I think the most shocking part was when Rand's foster dad knew what was happening, and whatever orders he had received got reprogrammed. This is someone in the throes of giving life, and she's dying while she's trying to give this life, and he stops. It was just a stunning moment.
Yeah.
And this is a scene, like, again, it seems in the books we're told more about this, and the fact that we got to actually see it happen is another thing that I thought the show excelled at, giving us scenes that we were just told about, but now we're gonna recreate them for you. And the fact that it was recreated so well, and even like in the books, if I'm correct, like Tam just finds him, but this one, like having him, like you said, Patricia, involved in the act of giving birth. I mean, that was just.
Speaks volumes to his character, and that's what they miss. They miss little moments to elevate characters.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
and so I thought that beginning and that ending there was just the way they strung it through. That was like and I think I was like you, Ben. It's like we got to see an Aiel, and we're going to actually see this battle, and you get to again. What's great foreshadowing here, because the Aiel are going to play such a big role later. This was perfectly done to let us know. The Aiel are badasses.
Like what they're capable.
It just takes one pregnant Aiel with a few spears, and that's it.
Exactly.
That's it. You're over. The only thing I would say for the Aiel going forward, I hope they land diversity on the Aiel.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I know there's this notion because they're red haired, they have to be one way. I mean, no, you can.
Doesn't matter.
Find you red-haired people around the world.
Exactly.
It's very different. You can do anything you want. It's a show.
Yeah.
You got to.
It's like I live in Ecuador, and I've met red-headed Ecuadorian people. So I'm like, there's no way.
Especially since the Aiel themselves, whatever they look like, their culture is supposed to be like the spear stuff is heavily Zulu, is influenced by. Robert Jordan was looking at the Zulu, so the way they fight with spears is literally taken from the Zulu. They're supposed to be taken from Apache, and so they're literally this mix of non-European cultures, and so culturally, and so I hope when they actually create them for the show and we get to see more, that they diversify them as well. But I thought, great opening.
Yeah,
great way to introduce the Aiel.
I agree, and it paired nicely with the reveal of Rand as the Dragon Reborn. But first of all, we'll get into their journey through the ways, which I feel was a bit underwhelming, especially with Matt leaving at the end of episode 6. And everyone just being like, Matt, and he's just standing there. Matt, hey, Matt.
Oh no, he's gone.
Hey, it's close. Matt, it's closing.
Yeah, I have COVID. I can't come in there.
It was so just like, oh, I know Barney Harris left the show, and so they've already recasted Matt for season 2, but that just felt like such a cheesy, just bullshit way to be like, and there's Matt's character. Bye.
The epitome of anticlimactic.
Exactly. And that was the end of the episode too. And so it's just like, okay, and so for their journey through the ways, it's like they're dealing with the aftermath of Matt leaving, and it just didn't really convince me. And then paired with the actual look of the ways and what happens in there.
Budget.
Yeah, budget.
Yeah, the ways. I remember somebody said the ways reminded me of something that I would have seen on Hercules or Xena.
Yeah,
it looked like one of those kind of places.
Shit.
It reminded me of like the really early Star Trek like show budgets. And the fight. I was expecting a fight scene like that, to be honest.
I'm gonna have to get a salt shaker for both of you.
Well, while we're on it, Machin Shin, I guess. Oh, what can I say? Machin Shin in the books. Machin Shin is like the Black Wind, right? The thing that shows. I thought it was interesting. They made Black Wind look like, I guess, like a bunch of pebbles. I guess they have to make it look like something because it's wind. So I understand they have to give it some depth,
like ash or something. I don't know.
In the books, it's like it's very Lovecraftian almost. Like it whispers terrible things to you, and you want to do terrible things to others or yourself. And it reminds me of like an Event Horizon, that place that Lawrence Fishburne and them ship went to, when the guy Sam Harris pulls out his eyes. It's like. it's that kind of thing. But in here, it's kind of like I don't know. It's kind of like a mean girl who tells you like terrible things about yourself.
Yeah, exactly. It's just like you're in the locker room and someone.
Your chin is way too large.
They don't like you. Green's never going to be with you.
Yeah,
you're not good enough.
Like the Dark Side Charlotte from Charlotte's Web or something. That's what it's for.
Yeah, like I'm gonna tell you, really, it can hurt. Watching Shin can hurt you in other ways.
Yeah, but this is just like you're ugly. Your nose is too big. It's not menacing.
You'll never get
published. You'll never get published. Yeah, that's the author's word.
So what
your
you're
writing
saying is we could rename it. We could rename it Facebook. That's what you're saying.
Yeah. Basically, Watching Shin was Facebook.
Welcome to Facebook.
And I get it. It was interesting the way they used it to get. Basically, it was done. That was done for Rand's purpose, to reveal he's a dragon at the end. But I was like, it was one of those things where I wasn't upset. I more so laughed. I was like, yeah, Watching Shin is supposed to tell you these terrible things, but now it's just really, really petty and mean.
Yeah, that's it. It's petty and mean.
Don't listen to the ways tell you petty, mean things that you don't want to face about yourself.
Yeah, and then it's just
like I was really excited about the ways too, and it just was.
Me too. Yeah, it just gave Rand and Egwene some time to snuggle and Perrin to brood, and everyone to
brood some more.
Yeah.
Breed some more,
and everyone to judge each other over how they think of Matt. It's like, okay, yeah. But then when they got to the other side, I loved the look of Faldara.
Oh my god, yes!
Just the set.
The
set was really, really good. It had this like kind of Mongolian fortress type vibe to it. Really awesome. Loved that. And then,
what did everyone think of the changes to Amelisa and Lord Agelmar's characters? In the books, they're like in the books, Faldara is pretty much the one place Aes Sedai can go, and people are like ready to kiss their feet. Right? Moyrane shows up, and they're like almost sycophants, right, to Aes Sedai. Like, you can't speak ill of an Aes Sedai here because they're so close. And of course, I was surprised too when Lord Agelmar is like, "What y'all doing here?" And I was like, "Whoa, where is this shade coming from?" Like, to Moyrane. And so it was an interesting change. I just want to know what people might have thought about.
And then his sister had the ring too. That was a nice little touch. She had the ring like without a gemstone.
Yes,
which was a good way of showing like, she went to the White Tower, but didn't necessarily make the cut. I mean, it kind of. For me, it didn't really. Lord Agelmar worked in the sense that he was being set up to face the Trolloc army as the leader. So it was kind of like it felt a little bit like Helm's Deep, where it's like, this is my duty and I have to fight to the end for my city kind of thing. And so why should I rely on the Aes Sedai, et cetera, et cetera. But his sister, that didn't really work for me because. We're getting into the finale, and then we have the Trolloc army invading through Tarwin's Gap. Tarwin's Gap fell, and who do we have to face this massive 20,000 Trolloc army? We have 5 channelers, one of which didn't make it through to the White Tower and become an Aes Sedai.
She learned the
Who's leading them?
And then 2 of them who are just like weak ass, because you can see that their link is really faded. And then Nynaeve and Egwene just kind of like stroll in off the side, and then they're like, okay, we bond, link together, and wipe out a whole Trolloc army. So if I have so many problems with that.
I'm torn about that, because going back and reading, I was like, I figured what they were trying to do here was they're trying to give something for the others to do.
Yeah.
And you saw that pretty much Perrin had nothing to do.
Yeah.
I guess Matt wasn't there
because Matt
about it. Perrin was running around. Perrin was just running around the castle.
Perrin had to think. Stop. He was thinking and brooding. Stop.
And they're trying to give something. They're trying to give a role for Nynaeve and Egwene in this larger battle. Because remember, in the books, they all go to the Black.
Exactly.
So once they change that, when it's just one person, it has to do again with them starting off with the fact that everybody knows they're looking for the Dragon Reborn. And so, once they find out only one person can go. And so they kind of had committed to that from the beginning. And that's why Lan is just conveniently missing and with a machete, trying to get through all the blight by himself.
Yeah. And there's so much stuff.
And so it ends up with these women having to face this Trolloc army. And I understand you want to give them something to do. And it was like, wow, glorious when they do it. But then, I was like, well, if that's the case, why do y'all need Rand again?
Well, what's really sad about...
8,000 Trollocs. I don't understand.
Yeah, but what's
why
really
you need
sad about that, you just sort of touched on it, is when the men were going to hold the gap and the gap was going to fall. And when it
Yeah.
fell, the women were going to have to
Right.
protect the city. Well, you only had 5. It would have been nice to see
Just put
the
the women at
really
Tarwin's Gap.
protecting the city. And in that
Yeah,
last moment,
yeah.
these 5 having to come in and wipe
Yeah,
up
well, yeah.
anything.
They wiped it all out. They never really reached the city. They never
No.
fought the city. Yeah, I
Deus
thought it was
ex
going to be like a
machina.
fight up the city itself.
But they should have just been at Tarwin's Gap if that's the case.
Thank you.
Like,
Oh my gosh.
You could have done the same thing and saved your brother and everyone.
But I mean, this comes down to it. That was, I mean, it has to do. I mean, I'm trying to. They decided to reveal that Rand is Dragon Reborn in episode 7.
Through
right?
Min
in the
through
books,
Min
the
Farshad's
reveal is
visions.
just that he can channel,
Yeah.
and so he does this channeling, and his channeling is super channeling. He destroys the entire Trolloc army.
He goes Super Saiyan.
It feels like once they've taken away that reveal that he's a dragon, once they've taken that away, and they'd already told us, well, he's a Dragon Reborn, not just he can channel. That's where they had to make Rand's ending have to do, like Patricia says, this Anakin, will you choose, the dark side or the light side? They had to create this other reveal, and that's what it ended up being. And to me, I always think that's where episode 8 kind of like felt like, like the climax just after this great buildup, it didn't. Well, if he's a dragon, he's the center person. He really seemed to do much. he was like the Black Ghostbuster, right? He didn't really do much.
We went there.
Right? It was like, if you're the center guy, I don't understand why you're like the side guy. I don't know. And I get what they were trying to do, but it was kind of like take away one thing.
So you have
take away
Advil
one
and
thing, and I
horsewhips
think
on
we were
hand.
left with this vacuum, and I can't help but feel that's part of what made episode 8 kind of fall a little flat.
Yeah, I mean, it felt anticlimactic because Rand. There was so much stuff in episode 7 that was kind of reaching a peak, and it worked in some ways. In some ways, it didn't. I thought the Lan and Nynaeve's relationship, while it did get a little bit too much like, oh, I'm falling head over heels for you, I'll devote myself to you entirely kind of thing. The build up towards their relationship and them finally having sex, it was like, good on you guys, go for it. The love triangle thing, that coming up, that was a bit, it didn't need to be mentioned at all, really. It was kind of like a useless sense of conflict from my perspective. And then the way that Min Farshad's visions and Rand's own memories kind of converging and him realizing like, I am the Dragon Reborn, that all worked for me. I thought that was good. But then episode 8 just, it fell flat in so many ways. It felt like there was so much less tension because when everyone was going through the blight together, the blight itself felt more malicious and alive. In this case, it was like Rand and Moyrane, they're just walking through the blight. She's like, don't touch anything. And he's like, you look tired. You should sleep on the stuff I just told you not to touch. And then he has like this, dream visions and all this kind of stuff. And it didn't really feel as, powerful or as important as it was in the book when they were all going through together. And Lan is reminiscing about the 7 towers of Malkier. And in this case, Rand and Moyrane see it. It's covered by the blight. Nothing is mentioned about it really. And then Lan sees it when he's running and hacking slash through the blight, Indiana Jones style in a jungle. And then he sees it, and there's no shot of him being like, oh God, like that was my home. That was, I was supposed to be the king of that place. And none of that happened. And then
I think for me, all of it all comes back down to episode 8 needed more time.
Yep.
Because it has all of these disparate threads, and they try to cram so much into it that nothing has any sort of impact. And you needed at least another episode to give all of these like plot lines time to breathe and to give them the importance that they deserve.
Yeah, I agree.
It felt more like a divide and conquer kind of thing. I think the writers felt maybe pushed into a corner. They're like, we're at the end of the book here. This is how it unfolds in the book. How are we going to play it out into the TV show? And I think they really wanted to try and give people arcs, So Perrin just ends up running around, Valdara trying to. He could be trying just to find like a hammer at this point.
There's also
I'm just looking for a bathroom, man. I don't.
There's a point where he like, I think I see Patrick Fane, and he runs off, and there's a bat. I don't know what the bat was there for. It scares him, and then he ends up coming back. It's like, so wait a minute, you went looking for Patrick Fane. Patrick Fane went to the place you were just at. What in the Scooby Doo running around place is this? I thought they were going in and out of every room after a while. There'd be a song playing. I was like, it was.
I was really literally interested in seeing what the original version of the script for this episode was.
Yeah,
because
Matt
I think was still involved.
Like I think it probably went through a lot of different iterations, or what we see on screen is probably quite different from what they originally intended, just due to COVID and Matt leaving and all of that. So I think that would be, I want to say, kind of reassuring. It would possibly reassure me if I saw that their original vision was different from what we ended up getting.
Yeah, I think a lot of this was just sidelined by COVID and a lot of scheduling issues. You know, I've read that Egwene and Nynaeve joining that little quintet of women to stop a giant Trolloc army, that had to do with scheduling issues, and you can kind of just see like they're just walking in on a soundstage and joining that, and then the rest was CGI, and the Trollocs were pretty horrendous, the VFX of that.
We're left with this. We're left with Rand. I mean, what Rand's ultimate battle becomes this choice, right?
Yeah.
Which, I mean, I kind of, again, it was really Anakin, like you said,
and Ishmael like talking into his ear like the Emperor Palpatine,
right.
You know.
And you know, they're pulling things from the books because, you know, both Egwene and Rand do see this alternate. By the way, in the books, this is like a multiverse. This is an alternate reality that they see, where they are married and they have a kid. That's like something that actually happens in another reality. Here, they never make that certain. It's something like, oh, you can create it. No, that's a whole other world in which that happened in. And so I saw where they were. You can tell that they were pulling pieces from the book to make this, and they made the Eye of the World something different, right? The Eye of the World is no longer this great pool of male power that Rand is going to use to, you know, come into his own being and super channel and destroy an entire army. Yeah. It's now, I guess, is it the Dark Lord's prison? Have they moved it from Shia Ghul, or is it Saracen?
I think it's one.
Do they have the information wrong here? I'm wondering if they're wrong and they think this is the Dark One's prison.
I think it's one of the seals.
Trying to work with me.
I think it's I think it's like one of the seals for his prison.
Yeah, and it's one of the seals.
Yeah, I think this is another case of what the information the characters get is not actually correct.
Accurate.
Nobody knows. But Shia, I guess, I'm a book person, so I'm like, come on, how many times do we hear the Dark One is in prison? It's like nobody, I guess nobody in this one knows that Shia Ghul is in the Dark prison.
In the first book, Rand is so insistent that he's killed the Dark One.
He is. Yeah. That I thought was true. They all think that Ishmael, the Alzamon, is the Dark One.
It's like, no, he's just a Forsaken, and he's just a...
It was just, but you know, look, are we all going to talk about the elephant in the room here? That the green man missing in the room.
That is like on par with Loyal in terms of like, that was one of my favorite parts of
there's no green man.
The crazy
and I
mess
get
of an ending.
Guy running out of money. You couldn't have painted a guy green.
Just glue some leaves and branches to him.
Look,
someone from the effects department.
For one, there's something about the Green Man that is interesting because it has to do with actual old folklore, which is always
human folklore. Yeah, like our folklore.
And so I really wanted to see that kind of character. Yeah. We learn in the later books, like there's an importance to these folks. Like these folks who were the Green Men, there's this relationship to Loyal that they had that's fascinating. And there's something that was a letdown in not seeing that. Like I remember when I wrote in my blog in episode 7, I said, hope we see a Green Man. There's something, the letdown in that was a bit of, I don't know if it was just not the budget or the show not having the faith that people who have not read the books were not going to accept a Green Man.
But there's so much, right? There's so much of the show that could be the same thing.
I always judge my things on, like, I was saying, like, are you guys ready to go there and just be like, okay, we're going to go here and we're going to trust that you guys are ready to come along. And I always think of, like, when I first saw the first Avengers movie, like when they have the aliens come out the portal in the sky, I was like, yes, because that's what we would see in a comic book. And I could see earlier directors being like, we're not going to go there. We're going to lose people who are not used to the comic books. But they're like, no, we're just going there. And I really wanted to see them go there, and not having that happen.
Yeah.
It was disappointing. I mean,
but it comes down to budget again,
money or what have you. But it would have been good to see that character. And I don't know, they could have done something to me with that last finale that was just a bit more impactful than what it ended up being.
Yeah, I mean, we'll get into the confrontation with Rand and Ishmael. So turns out, I mean, for readers of the books, they know Ishmael is a Forsaken, and he's one of the followers of the Dark One, and he's not actually the Dark One. And so it's kind of
we've just given a spoiler.
Yeah, no, this whole thing's been full of spoilers, man. So we get to that point, and for me, it's just Ishmael in the books is psychotic and just really off the hinge, and I loved that. And I felt like this version of Ishmael was so composed. It almost, and his outfit too was really. I was watching on YouTube someone commenting on the episode, and they compared it to like the outfit of like a futuristic waiter, and it really took me out. It took me out of it so much because the costume was just so like whatever, and the guy was so calm, and I'm like, no, like I understand he's trying to put Rand through this struggle of like, yes, give in to the dark side kind of thing, but it just didn't hit for me. And
it wasn't scary.
No. And then when Rand eventually gets to the point where he makes a choice, I love Egwene so much that this is not, I understand that it's her choice to go to the White Tower and not to live this life with me, and how that was ultimately his way of breaking through and steering away from the dark. But his expulsion of power, his representation of power, was less impressive than Nynaeve using channeling in the cave with Logain. It was like, Nynaeve looks way more badass than you, and you're the Dragon Reborn, and your first true explosion of power and channeling was just like, and then the guy's face melts and he smiles at you because he knows I'm not the Dark One, and now I know who you are. And it's just it didn't work for me.
Well, I thought he was smiling because he got Rand to break one of the seals.
That too, yeah. So it was like revealing himself as the Dragon Reborn and then breaking the seal. Yeah, but the cheeky little smile that was essentially him saying like, I'm not the truest villain, and there's more seasons to come. So
they did cast him well. You know, he fits the bill. But
I just wanted him to be
it's
more
tough
crazy.
for actors to work with what they're given, isn't it?
Mm.
It's just another case of that.
Yeah, that's it. And I think this goes back to Sarah's point about the shrieking, our shrieking middraw, our shrieking fades. Like in the books, again with build up, we get a lot of. I mean, we get quite honestly a little bit too much Balsamar. he's constantly like Worm. He's constantly showing up in the dreams. And in this one, we seem to get like there are one or two dreams, but he never talks.
Yeah.
He never gives his speeches where he's like telling them what's going on and what they're gonna do and how he's the Dark One.
Just sweet nothings in the night.
And really going. And so when we finally do get him at the end, it does feel a little anticlimactic because he was the guy with the fiery eyes. Before he was the fiery eye guy who's talking a lot of shit.
But now it's just like arrow pierces his eye and then just like.
And then it's just.
But that was clearly another moment where they're like, look, the budget can't carry this forever. We need to stop it.
Exactly. We can't have Fireface, man.
Let's find a guy on the street and get him to pay Ishmael and just crack on with it.
The budget guys were on the set like,
I just
probably
imagine
had the
someone
FD over his shoulder the entire time while producing this.
I just imagine someone there on the side of every set with a calculator just being like, the budget's going down. Minus, minus,
It's like, soon we're going to have to get rid of that lawyer wig. It's just costing us too much.
Well, you have to wonder if they get their second season, if they'll get more money and they can really
they have already
go at it.
They got it.
Yeah,
they got some.
It's been greenlit. Yeah.
Okay.
But more episodes.
It's sort of like The Witcher.
This show's costing more than Game of Thrones.
Yeah.
Right? Per episode.
Because there's more visual effects.
Yeah.
And they also have to spend a lot of money on COVID precautions.
Yeah, that too.
So that takes a big chunk of the budget out.
And inflation. You know how much it costs to get an Ogier into port these days?
I think that's the second time you've mentioned inflation today, Fenders.
It's hilarious. Yeah.
Oh man. Anyway, Patty or Sarah, do you wanna give some final thoughts on on the finale.
You guys are like, there's one thing that you have to mention.
We're gonna get to the
Yeah.
Shanchins. We're gonna get to the Shanchins. Yeah. Patty,
what saves the show? Save episode 8.
Well, I guess my final thought would be that I just hope that they get a little more money for the budget. And I don't know. I want to say slow down. That's not in my vocabulary usually to say slow down, but they do. They need to give some more love to some of these characters because they just feel like pawns that you can just get rid of on the chessboard. So I hope they spend a little more time with the quiet moments with these characters so that they can build them up for their big moments.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah, I would second all of that. Like, I hope they get a bigger budget. I hope they get more episodes. I think where the show has really shined has been some of these smaller world building moments, like Weep for Manetheren. That was a really powerful scene, and I want more of that kind of thing and less of the just kind of running around. You don't really care about the battles or anything like that, because they don't have any. We haven't had the build up for them to have that kind of impact yet.
Right, because that particular moment was this perfect combination of character building, giving history and lore, and also giving a sense of the bloodline of these people who come from the Two Towers, and they have the blood of Manetheren and their people, those people in their veins, and all of them singing this somber song together was like,
and that's
cool.
A scene that almost got cut, and I'm so glad that it didn't.
Yeah, because that for me, it resonated in terms of what the show, like you said, is missing a lot of the time. Is just these quieter moments where you let Loyal talk about lore and history with Rand, or these quieter moments where you have, them and
like the relationship building.
Yeah, them and Baerlon and Rand, like having this weird flirtation with this barmaid, and then thinking like, oh, Egwene, and it's like that's the kind of stuff that makes this stuff work. It sells it because Rand realizes that he's a cute young guy, and maybe there's more to Egwene in this world. But then he really loves Egwene, at the end of the day. It's just all these little details that make the characters stand out. We'll get into
Speaking of which, have we discussed Min?
Yeah. I think we mentioned Min very briefly, but let's get into her before we get into the Shanchins and final impressions. But do you want to jump off on Min, Phenderson?
Oh, I mean, it was great to see Min. Because we didn't go to Baerlon, these other places, you wondered if we would see her. As I said before, I find it odd that Min is hanging out at the far ends of the world. But in the book, she had been a tavern person before. I don't know if she'd ever lived in the Borderlands, but hey, I'm willing to roll with that. I thought the actress, I like the actress that played her. They've given this Min a bit. She's a bit more direct than the other men, so that's fine. I think that's part of just growing everyone a bit more. And so, yeah, I'm interested to see. We all know Min is coming back for a lot of reasons. And so, I'm looking forward to seeing her again as a character.
Yeah,
since she took off. This Min did have the sense to I'm out of here.
She just jumped on a car.
But you do wonder what she's running from, right? I'm wondering, is she running from that, or is she running from certain visions that she's seeing and involving Rand and her? So,
yeah. Anyone else on Min?
I think the casting again was absolutely perfect. We're getting much older versions of the characters than in the books. So Min's quite innocent, a little more childlike in the books, and we're not getting that here. It feels more serious, a little bit darker. We need that tone with the series. We do. It just helps just stretch out that appeal more to more viewers.
Yeah, I agree, but I think the way that they implemented her into the episode worked, in the sense that she withheld information from Moyrane, and Rand coming back alone was enough of a spark to tell him more of the truth about himself. And so it's cool that she's kind of like playing this game of telling, because Moyrane obviously has her own desires and her own plans. So it's kind of like withholding this from her because this is not for her to know. This is for Rand specifically to know, or this is for Nynaeve to specifically know, etc. Yeah.
Yeah,
I'm hoping that we never have to see Almindra.
All right, and before
people who read the books know what that means.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What did you guys make of the actual visions when she had them in the tavern? Did you like the graphics that they used for that, or?
it was okay. It didn't really sell me that much.
Budget constraints.
Yeah.
Budget constraints again, definitely.
It was what it could.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And before we get into final impressions, the tidal wave in the room about the final scene. How I can't remember, like I never know how to pronounce this properly. Sanchin or Shanchin?
Shanchin.
They hate
the
that little
audiobook
girl.
again, so.
Yeah. They hate that little girl on the beach so much. Yeah. This is just a funny thing. So final scene of the episode, the Shanchin come in on their boats with their slave channelers, I think they are essentially. Mm-hmm. It was just a bit goofy to me because there's this little girl on a beach and they come in and use their channeling to create a tidal wave, and I'm like, they really fucking hate that little girl because there's nothing else on that beach. Who else is there to witness that, you know?
Yeah.
But that was kind of a thing where they introduced this right at the very end. This is a tease to be like, okay, come on for season 2. We got this big new baddie. They didn't mention the Shanchin.
There's one little bit. Moyrane, when she's talking to the head of the Blue Aja, the sitter, which I never explained, or sitters, she says, I'm going out to investigate some ships.
Yeah.
Okay. And so nobody should know who the Shanchin are.
Yeah.
Because though they could have mentioned Arthur Hotwing having armies that went across the sea, that would have helped. As I think you said, Adrian, there were like missed points there that Loyal or anybody else could have brought up.
Exactly.
Is just to say that there are other people across the sea, or like there are other people across the Arathos. So they never fully say, but I do remember, but you only know that if you read the books, that ships have been disappearing.
And that's in the and that's in the midst of a conversation that a lot of people could easily gloss over because it's just such a brief.
Yeah, it's in the middle of they're in a bath.
Yeah.
You know, so
another. Yeah,
nobody would have picked that up. That was like, I mean, just like Shanchin and the End to me, those were teasers for. Those were like, okay, we're giving this to fans, right? People who know the books and know who the Shanchin are. Because otherwise, it'd be like, who are these guys coming on these ships that look like Lord of the Rings-ish people? They look like
Haradrim,
Did anyone find it a little bit strange that I think they clearly thought the colours were quite problematic, so they decided to go with mouth gags instead?
Yeah.
What?
And so, you know, it was so
BDSM, man. It's all throughout this series.
I don't know.
Those mouth gags actually are literally represent. People have pointed. I saw it immediately. They're the mouth gags that were used on enslaved men and women in Brazil. They're really common.
Wow.
And it's like a common picture. And so everybody's like, you guys just use the slave. Like anyone who's familiar with slavery, right, has seen those pictures before.
Yeah.
And so when I saw it, I was like, the Shanchin have always been, wow, big baddies, but they've also been like a little problematic. Edward Said would come in here and mark you with like 10 Orientalisms.
Yeah, they're also called gossip bridles. Supposedly they were used to keep women from gossiping.
Yes, from gossiping. So, so I thought it was an interesting use of that. And like, I always wondered what they were going to do with the Shanchin, because I said the Shanchin can be problematic, especially in your more diverse understandings, because they suffer from a lot of these strange people from across the sea with their strange customs, right? And they tend to be, and even though in Randland, on that side of the world, they have a diversity of people, you really get the Shanchin are diverse. Though they try to break it up by saying, no, there are people here with blonde hair too, and so it's a mix of everything. Even if they have a Black Empress, it's a mix of everything, but the show seemed to really lean in. I was wondering what the show was going to do, but when everybody came on the deck were a little darker and swarthy, and they were, for some reason, they weren't slurring their speech. Like they were actually, because everybody in this book speaks the same language. There's just, there's old tongue, but they're really speaking what sounds like something else. And then they went with this, what to me was like, slavery mouth gags. I was like, you guys saw Lord of the Rings, and you know all the problems of the Battle of Pelennor Field. Right? You guys haven't recreated that here. You guys have had like 10 years of Peter Jackson's to figure out what to do there.
20 years of Peter
I
Jackson's.
was happy to see that scene. I was excited. I was yes, but I was also like, hope you guys know what you're doing here. And
well, Patty or Sarah, do you want to get in here with some impressions of the
Yeah,
Shan-Chan?
I agree with all of that. It just seemed really odd. And I'm thinking the little girl was, I was thinking the little girl, what is she? Is she like another Dragon Reborn? They had to like put a tidal wave on her. I didn't see like armies. It needs to be like buried beneath water. And I was like, maybe they need to have to bring the ships in. So I didn't understand what the show of force was for no one to see except the audience. So introducing of another baddie, fantastic, but you haven't resolved some stuff with the baddies that you have.
True. Yeah. Sarah?
Yeah, I mean, I agree with Patty and Phenderson have been saying, that it's interesting to see them. I'm looking forward to what they do with it. I hope that they avoid some of the pitfalls that it seems like they're going straight for. But I guess we have to wait until season 2 to really find out.
Yeah. And Ben, do you wanna give your impressions of that last scene and then get into your final impressions of the show as a whole?
So I'm thinking they only cast a girl on the beach because of budget. Again, they can have an entire army to be washed away. That's my opinion on that.
Poor girl.
So I get out the salt. But no, I'm really excited for the Shan-Chan in some ways. Yeah, there's probably going to be some problematic things which are going to be quite difficult to overcome, but at least it's going to make viewers hate them. That's going to be abundantly clear straight from the get-go. And I'm interested to see how much traveling we do in the next season 2, because, there is a lot of traveling in the next book, and it feels very exotic and very different. So are we going to get that, or is budget going to come into play again? And, we only just get a little slice of what we want to see.
Mm-hmm. And then how are they going to play Moyrane into season 2? Because I don't think we brought up, but she essentially gets gentled by Ishmael.
I don't
Stilled.
I think she's shielded.
Or is it a shield?
Yeah, I don't think she's
shielded.
stilled. I think
Yeah.
it's shielded.
Because she can still feel it.
That's
Yeah.
what I'm thinking they're playing with this. Yeah.
I think because Moyrane doesn't really have a lot to do in book 2, so
No.
this gives her a journey and an arc. And so even though it's quite different from the books, it's a huge departure. I think that from a TV perspective, you can't have your main character like MIA.
Yeah.
And so this gives her something to do.
That's true. And Sarah, what are your final impressions for the season?
Overall, I really liked it. I tend not to be a super critical viewer of things that I'm predisposed towards liking.
Mm-hmm.
There were some changes. I didn't necessarily agree with all of them, as we've discussed in this episode. But overall, I enjoyed it. I'm looking forward to season 2. It was nice to come on to SFF Addicts and talk about a show that I did like, as opposed to Why the Last Man.
Yeah, just chat on that show. And Patty, what about you? What are your final impressions of this season?
I love what Sarah just said. I am predisposed towards fantasy, and I have always brought that suspension of belief when it comes to a really bad Transformers movie or a fantasy show that has missed the mark on a couple of things. These are the worlds that I enjoy, even though the characters seemed a little bit off and too many, and the pace went too fast, and I'm lost on some things because of that. I will be back for season 2 to see where it goes, and I hope they just slow the pace a little bit, which again is weird for me to say, so that I can have those little moments, and I hope my boy Perrin comes back with a vengeance.
Yeah. And Phenderson, what about you? Final impressions?
Yeah, I mean, I think overall, despite you heard all my criticisms, I did like the show. I'm glad it's there. I'd rather it be there than not. Overall, I think I liked most of the show. I had my criticisms. I had my what at times. But I want to see the show succeed. I want to see more of it. I'm looking forward to it. I take to heart again that I think that Robert Jordan himself was working out some things in the first few books, and so I'm hoping that they're going to work out those things that didn't work. I thought the things that worked well, they did well. I want to see them keep that up. Plans change. Egwene and Nynaeve, I'm really looking forward to seeing their journey. And there are a lot of things I'm looking forward to seeing in the next season. I would like to see, more of I would like to see more of the Sean Chan, of course. I expect to see Soldam and Damani. I'm just going to go ahead and give a bunch of spoilers here. If anybody's read the book, I'm sorry. I hope I see Black Aja. I hope some people who I know are Black Aja are revealed as being Black Aja. I hope to see Varen. I can't wait to see Varen. I hope we get to see Elida. I'm actually hoping, because of the way books 2 and 3 go, that there are ways that, so they've got to cut down. They don't have 14 seasons. I'm hoping they can combine some of 2 and 3. Like, I wouldn't mind to see in season 2 both Falme, the Battle of Falme, and the Fall of Tyr. I would get on with it. Let's get to it, because really, book 2 is a whole lot of we're looking for the Horn of Valier, and here we go, and and then book 3. Rand isn't even in book 3 for the most part. He just kind of shows up every once in a while, and then at the end, boom, here I am, homie. I'm the Dragon Reborn. and so I'm hoping that they extend some episodes, but they also condense some things so we can get to the meat and potatoes of the show, which is actually him, because really, I'm rereading again, and like book 4, things change so much. The characters change, because it's they've grown up a lot in what they've been through, and they're we're about to become world leaders here, so things are going to change.
Yeah, I agree, and I think they are planning to condense book 2 and 3 together for season 2. But if they do that, it's they really need to
step up their games
in terms of more episodes.
Yeah, you're gonna have to have more episodes for that.
Yeah, more episodes. A little bit more thoughtful about where they put their budget and their VFX, but also more time for editing. I think just more time for editing and more time to make each episode as clean as possible, because there were a lot of issues with editing throughout this season. But despite that, I really enjoyed it. It was fun to watch it with my mom and dad. And despite all the things that annoyed me, nothing threw me off of the show so much that I would say I'm not watching season 2, because I will definitely watch season 2. And I'm very, very thankful that all of you took the time today to chat with me about this show. There's a lot of passion here, a lot of people who love the series, and I'm very glad that you could all join me. We'll just go one by one. If you can tell listeners and viewers where to find you on social media, if you want to pimp your book a little bit, that's totally cool too. And we'll start with you, Patty.
Hi, everyone. Thanks for being with us. My debut novel, Forging a Nightmare, came out in November. It is an urban fantasy about an FBI agent who learns that he is a Nephilim, and that in order to stop a serial killer, he has to saddle up with one of the 4 horsemen of the apocalypse, and he has to tame her, which doesn't come easy. You can find me on Twitter. That's where I usually hang out, at Tristan. That's TREISTAN. And that's where I'm usually hanging out. Or you can find me on my website at bybirthright.com.
Awesome. Thank you. And Ben, what about you?
So you can find me on Twitter as well, at literature and lo-fi, because apparently you can't put and in it. There's not enough room. But also, I've got my YouTube channel, so you can find me at Literature and Lo-Fi, where basically I do videos on the Wheel of Time, a lot of focus on indie books as well. Just generally try to troll a few people as well.
Right on. And Sarah, where can people find you?
So you can find Fiction Fans wherever you get your podcasts. You can also find us on Twitter and Instagram at FictionFansPod. And you can email us at fictionfanspod@gmail.com if you have any thoughts about what I've said on this podcast and want to come disagree with me.
Right on. And Phenderson, we'll close out with you. If you can show that copy of, which book do you have there?
So,
Gathering Storm.
Oh my God.
Where can people find you?
So, all right. So there's 2 of them now. There's 2. Twins. Yeah. So what I was going to say was, she's taking my lighting. You guys can find me at my website, pdjèllyclark.com, or you can find me on Twitter when I'm there at pdjèllyclark. I'm the author of several books. One of those is Ring Shout. The other that came out last year is called The Master of Djinn. If anyone wants it, thank you for having me on, Adrian, to talk about this. I've been blogging about it, talking about it to people who don't want to hear.
My pleasure, my friend.
So I have a trapped audience now who can listen to me rave and rant and critique and love at the same time about this story. I'm sorry we didn't get to talk about Luz Theron, that we got to see Luz Theron, who is a person of color. And I was like, yes. So that was great to see as well. But thank you for having me here.
No, it was my pleasure. And for anyone who's interested, I did an interview with Phenderson back in June of last year. The video is on the FanFiAddict YouTube channel, and the audio is on the SFF Addicts podcast feed in 2 parts, I believe. So yeah, if you're interested, go check that out. We talk a lot about history and Egypt and Djinn and magic and all kinds of cool stuff. But thank you all so much. It was a pleasure chatting about Wheel of Time with you. It was very nice to see you all. And yeah, I hope to have you back on sometime soon. Patricia and Sara, obviously together. Got to keep it 404 for next one, right?
We're a pair.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
Oh, yeah. All right. Well, thank you guys so much.
Thanks, Adrian. It was great coming on.
Thanks, Adrian.